This afternoon, just to warm us up a little bit, I wanted to just comment that I know as I've listened to these presentations for a long time, I thought I was fairly current about internet gaming, but as I listen to our speakers, it's clear nothing about internet gaming stops and waits for you to catch up. It's definitely a rapidly changing environment and industry. Our next topic on our panel, we're asking our panel to talk about what's going on with internet gambling in their jurisdiction. We hope to hear about what is planned, went well, and any areas of challenge. What I'd like to do is I'm just going to introduce our whole panel, and we'll go from there. Starting from on the back end down here, I guess, or the far side, Eric Weiss. Eric is the Chief of Technical Service Bureau and Slot Laboratory for the New Jersey Division of Gaming Enforcement. Eric Weiss has been with the division since 1991 and has held positions in the administrative, investigative, and executive bureaus. He briefly served as assistant to the Chief of Investigations before being asked to oversee the Slot Laboratory in November of 2007. Since taking control of the Technical Services Bureau, Mr. Weiss has been recognized for his efforts to improve the oversight and regulation of casino systems and games. This past year, he played a key role in the introduction of internet gambling into the state of New Jersey. Mr. Weiss was responsible for researching internet gaming policy, evaluating the internet gaming systems, and establishing and overseeing the approval and successful deployment of 7 internet gaming platforms. He's also responsible for establishing monitoring tools and procedures designed to ensure the ongoing integrity of internet gaming systems in New Jersey. And we know, as we were going through our discussion, Eric was already being called on, so we expect great things, Eric, as we move forward.
No pressure there.
Next to Eric is George Sweeney. George is the Senior Vice President for Charitable and iGaming, Ontario Lottery and Gaming Commission. George, we welcome you. Glad you took your time to come south of the border.
Glad to be here.
George Sweeney began his career at the Ontario Lottery Corporation in 1975 and has served in a number of capacities, including Senior Vice President responsible for both lottery and bingo business units. During his time, Mr. Sweeney was Senior Vice President responsible for, well, I already said that. Mr. Sweeney was also President of Interprovincial Lotteries Corporation from July 2005-2006 and served as a member of the ILC's executive team, which governs the national lottery games across Canada. Prior to joining OLG, Mr. Sweeney worked as the Chief Strategy Officer for the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. In this role, he was accountable for formulating, driving, and implementing the AGCO's strategy consistent with the Commission's vision and ensuring overall organizational alignment. His role also included accountability for the audit and gaming compliance function within the Commission. Mr. Sweeney is a member of the Board of Directors of the Responsible Gaming Council for Canada and has served on the Board of Directors for the North American State Provincial Lotteries Association. Next to George is Rebecca Goldsmith. Rebecca is the Deputy Director for the Delaware State Lottery. We definitely hear from you. Enjoy hearing from you, Rebecca, and we encourage your participation here. Rebecca Goldsmith joined the Delaware Lottery in the mid-2012 as Assistant Director of Operations and Administration, and as I understand is the brains behind Delaware's conversion to the internet gambling. So, prior to coming to lottery, Ms. Goldsmith had a 12-year career with the Delaware Department of Finance, serving first as a Senior Economic Analyst and then as Assistant Director of Unclaimed Property. Rebecca's responsibilities during those years included a broad range of duties ranging from complex legislative research related to tax policy matters to internal reorganization of the state's Unclaimed Property Compliance Unit. Most recently, she is credited with her work for the Delaware Lottery, leading to implementation of the state's first in-the-nation full-scale online casino offering, including poker, table games, and video lottery. Rebecca earned her master's degree in economics at Colorado State University. And closest to me is Jim Barbie. And Jim, thanks again for hosting our CIO and our operation. We appreciate all the assistance that you've given us. Jim Barbie is the Chief Technology Division for the Nevada Gaming Control Board. Jim Barbie joined the Nevada Gaming Control Board in 2000 and was appointed to his present position as Chief of MGC's Technology Division in 2011. As Chief of the Technology Division, Mr. Barber's responsibilities included oversight and review and approval for all gaming-related technology used in Nevada and advising the members of the Gaming Control Board and Commission on matters related to technology and gaming. Mr. Barbie received his BS in Computer Engineering from UNLV in 1999. Again, welcome to all of you to Massachusetts. And the way we're going to try to do this is I'd like to give an opportunity for each of you to spend a few minutes introducing your agency and summarizing where you are in each of your jurisdictions. And to do that, I'd like George to start off for us. Thanks, George.
Thank you very much, Rick, for the kind introduction, and thank you very much to the Commission for the invitation to speak here today. I'm just going to see if I can get this PowerPoint up and running. And it doesn't seem to be reacting for me. Can you guys help me out here? There we go. Perfect. Thank you very much.
That's what kids are for.
So I know, yeah, that's perfect. I know I've been given about 10 minutes to speak today, and I'm going to try and stick to that. 10 minutes is about the time it took my beloved Toronto Maple Leafs to choke away a 3-goal lead in Game 7 of the NHL playoffs to your hometown Boston Bruins last year. So as another visitor to this fine city and the Commonwealth, I hope to use my 10 minutes a little bit more productively than the Leafs did, and hopefully you will be just as pleased with the outcome. So, Rick did cover my introduction. I'll just basically tell you I've been involved in the business of government-run gambling for about 30 years now. I've worked in Ontario, I've worked in British Columbia, I've worked in the public sector, the private sectors, I've worked in regulation and oversight, covered gaming, slots, casino, and charitable gaming, and now the wonderful world of internet gaming. We're in the midst of rolling out a whole new suite of electronic games in Ontario to the bingo centers across the province, and we are getting very close to launching a very safe, secure, and responsible internet gaming platform under the banner playolg.ca. And I thought before I got into the detail about the internet, I'd give you a little bit of context about the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation and really the Canadian landscape, because obviously I think you need the context to understand why we are where we are. So provincial legislation, specifically the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation Act, dictates what OLG really exists for, and that's to do 4 things. In essence, our purpose is to stimulate economic development, to generate revenue for the Government of Ontario, to advance a very dynamic, responsible gambling agenda, which I will talk about, and to make sure that all of those things are done in the best interests of the province and the people of the province. And I think I can proudly say that OLG is very good at doing all of those things. And we really try hard to live up to our legislated mandate. We launched our lottery business in the mid-70s, and it was all launched based on community support. And casino gaming arrived in Ontario in 1994 with the opening of our first facility right across the river from Detroit in Windsor, Ontario. So today, OLG is one of the largest gambling companies in North America. Our lottery terminal network spans about 10,000 points of sale, and through that network, we process more secure transactions than both Visa and MasterCard combined. We got 24 gambling sites, either racinos or casinos, in the province, and the largest number of our 17,000 employees work at those sites. So the two longest standing businesses, lottery and gaming, drive about $7 billion in revenue to the province of Ontario, and $2 billion of that is profit. And as I mentioned earlier, we've got, of our 60 bingo centers in a unique partnership with the charity community in the province, we've got 20 of those now up and running with new electronic games, and we'll be rolling out across the rest of them over the next 18 months. And we're moving very, very quickly to the launch of playolg.ca. Our annual profit is returned in its entirety to the provincial government, and it's used to support healthcare, hospitals, community infrastructure, charities, not-for-profits, and amateur athletics. All told, OLG spurs about $3.7 billion of annual economic activity in the province of Ontario. So things like hosting fees to our casino communities, our employee payroll, payments to a host of stakeholders, including First Nations, and OLG regularly receives very strong international recognition and rewards for its RG programming. We spend about $50 million a year on research, prevention, and treatment in terms of problem gambling. One of the key objectives of our corporation, again spelled out in legislation, is to conduct and manage lottery schemes. And I need to spend a little bit of time on this with you, because those three words that you see underlined there really are the foundation of the gaming business in Canada. They are lifted right out of the Canadian Criminal Code, and our colleague from Gambling Compliance talked about this a little bit earlier in his remarks. But these are the words that really make gambling legal in my country. What the Criminal Code dictates is that a provincial government or its designate agency, in this case OLG, must conduct and manage the gaming activities, or we're offside federal law, and my colleagues and I don't want to go to jail, so we are pretty clear about what we have to do. So what do those three words mean? And to help you, I've included a bit of a checklist up here on the screen. These are the factors that have been identified through case law as being relevant to determining whether OLG is conducting and managing. So to be clear, we can contract out our operational side to private sector operators, and we do, and we will be doing more of that. But to meet our legal obligation to conduct and manage, we must demonstrate control over all of these factors. So we can't simply license out the gaming activity to the private sector. So we're the operating mind, and we will demonstrate on a regular basis that we are the operating mind and really the strategic entity of the gaming business in the province. So depending on the line of business, these factors can change a little bit, and it's very acceptable that they morph to fit the particular business that we're talking about. So in the internet gaming model that I'm going to talk about, we're focusing basically on items 1, 3, and 7. So that would be 1, setting strategic direction and establishing clear operational policies. Number 3, owning and retaining all the customer data, which I'll talk a bit more about. And number 7, compensation model. So in our iGaming model, OLG will handle all the dough. That's our job, and we will compensate our suppliers. We manage those contracts. This model is really a bit complex. It does morph from province to province. It does come from the Federal Criminal Code. These factors have really been approved by our Attorney General and came out of joint work between OLG and our regulator, the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario, my former employer. And the AGCO is a multi-purpose regulator. It provides oversight over legal gambling in the province, along with the sale, service, and consumption of alcohol. So specific to gaming, it works to ensure a strong regulatory environment by registering all of the manufacturers, suppliers to the gaming industry, employees of OLG, of those manufacturers and suppliers. It establishes standards and requirements. It approves rules of play. It tests and inspects gaming equipment, has a full-blown laboratory at the commission, and it investigates non-compliance. As we moved through the steps to establish our internet gaming business, we have been very, very careful to square up everything we're doing with our colleagues at the AGCO. That has paid bonuses for us, and the clear, kind of clean, open lines of communication are absolutely imperative. When I think back over the process of establishing our internet business, I'm reminded by some pretty wise words from a former executive chair of one of the biggest banks in Canada, and now one of our board members, so I have to be extremely respectful to him. He basically said, you know, when you're dealing with big technology projects like this, they generally cost twice as much as you think they will, and they'll take twice as long as you think they will to set up. Now, he wasn't far off when he said that, at least in the aspect of timing. This has not been an easy endeavor for us. So back in 2010, our board got from government a renewed mandate, which included, amongst other things, the direction to move forward with internet gambling. The government was very clear. You are going to do it with extreme care. In essence, this was driven by a number of factors, one of which was to repatriate some of the $500 million that leaves our province every year to offshore internet gambling operators. We knew we had to be good, and we knew we have to be good to get Ontarians to choose us over the other games that they have been very used to have become very used to playing. So we looked at various options, and we ultimately arrived at an operating model where OLG would conduct and manage a single internet gaming platform. And it would do so by engaging and overseeing the efforts of a third-party service provider, which would manage for us day-to-day operations. Public interest principles shaped our process. Provincial elections got in the way of timing a little bit. And our priorities for an operator included a company with the skills and experience to help us be competitive and to move forward with a very effective internet gaming strategy. We wanted a company that could promote responsible gambling, stand as a leader in that field. We wanted some company that was adept at identifying identity fraud, particular focus on preventing access to minors. We wanted an operator that had a demonstrated and proven ability to protect personal information, integrity of the games, and to detect money laundering, which, of course, we heard a little bit about earlier this morning, and other related criminal activity. We also had a stipulation that all key computer servers would have to be located in Canada and preferably in Ontario. So an RFP went out for that operator's role at the end of 2011. And after close to a year, a very fair, open, competitive process, we identified a preferred vendor. By the spring, a contract was approved by our government, and we executed with that vendor, and that vendor is GTEC. We've since been engaged with GTEC in various cycles of development, implementation, testing, really moving our business along so that we're very prepared to launch it. Our internet gaming solution is about to be delivered to our regulator. We are weeks away from handing the final solution to the AGCO for regulatory testing. And pending that review, we will launch basically in a two-stage process, a soft launch where we will invite some of our players out of our loyalty program of the casino business. And we'll let them test the system out, quite frankly, and be ambassadors for us for 4 to 5 weeks, and then we will open it up to the province, likely late summer, early fall. So here's the model that we arrived at with GTEC. In looking at it, I'd like you to remember those 3 important words I mentioned earlier from the Criminal Code: conduct and manage. OLG can't just hand over the operation to GTEC, or, as I said earlier, create some kind of licensing arrangement. We have to be the operating mind behind the gaming business, and we're going to do that by maintaining accountability for defining policies, setting strategy, retaining all customer data, and managing all the money. For its part, GTEC will be providing its software, they'll be managing day-to-day operations, and they'll be handling customer inquiries through a call center. And that call center will actually be integrated right into our larger operation so that according to protocol, various complaints or issues will be shot right into the OLG call center. So that would be like a tier 3 kind of issue. Our plans call for a phased rollout. The initial product offering will feature interactive casino-style games for online play, slots, video poker, and table games. Play OLG will also allow customers to purchase their favorite lottery products. So our version of Powerball and Mega Millions is Lotto Max and Lotto 649. And then over time, we're going to introduce bingo, followed by poker, peer-to-peer poker, and sports wagering. In those second and third phases, we'll be enhancing our mobile device capabilities, obviously recognizing the huge growth that we're seeing worldwide through our eyes and through the eyes of GTEC on the popularity of mobile. So you can actually get onto playolg.ca right now. It's a live site, and it will basically give you information about where we're going and when we're going there. All of this is underscored by a commitment of working towards the gold standard for responsible gambling. Those were the Premier's words when he announced that OLG would be getting into the business, and it is a business priority for us at OLG. Our public position is really quite clear. If you're a problem gambler, we don't want you. Our role in RG is very well defined. Our program is designated and designed to deliver independent, provincially funded agencies like the Responsible Gambling Council and the Centre for Addictions and Mental Health to weigh in and give us advice. And we have designed our program with very much of their advice. The core elements of the program: player education, employee training, support tools for our players, and voluntary self-exclusion are consistent actually across all of our lines of business. Certainly, as we built our site and we thought about this business, and we took advice from organizations like Responsible Gambling and the Centre for Addictions and Mental Health, we took them to heart. The result is that the work has been was embedded into our RFP, is embedded into our contract with GTEC, and is embedded right into the platform itself. It'll feature tools allowing players to self-educate and manage. You heard a little bit about that from our colleagues at Bally and IGT this morning. And you can see what some of those things are in the bottom left-hand corner of the slide that's up there right now. So things like spending limits, play duration limits, really can help people control their gambling habits. As with our land-based gaming sites, we will also offer voluntary self-exclusion, so any player that wants to take a break for a variety of periods of time, we will not let them, or we will use our very best efforts not to let them back on our site. And we'll also bridge them right into counseling and make our very best efforts to see that they get the help that they need. Naturally, we are a little bit reticent to go with detailed financials in a public way, but this afternoon I'm happy to share certain information with you. Our peer agencies like British Columbia, Manitoba, and Quebec have been in the internet business for some time now, in one way, shape, or form, either with lottery tickets, bingo, or casino games, and they are very good in terms of sharing their information with us. So based on their figures, other market research that we have done, our own player data, our population, we actually think it's reasonable that by year 4 or 5 of our business, we'll be providing $100 million in incremental profit to the province through our internet business. It's really part of a larger effort at OLG that we're referring to as modernization. And modernization is intended to address the shortcomings of our business model. Foremost amongst those shortcomings, as an example, is we're not always where our players want us to be in a number of ways, in the lottery business, in our casino gaming business, in our bingo business. And nor do we have the games they always want to play. So certainly offering our consumers a safe, secure, responsible internet gaming platform is a very important step to help us address those issues and to help us with our overall modernization of our business model. It goes without saying that the internet is rapidly changing our business. We've seen it in the music business, you've seen it in the media industry, and we do not want to be left behind, and that is a real driver for us to be moving ahead with playolg.ca. So we're actually very excited. We're getting very, very close, as I said earlier, to handing the product over to our regulator. We believe that what we're doing and how we're doing it fits with that purpose and mandate that I talked about earlier. We know it will create economic stimulation for the province. We're working on some interesting things with our colleagues at GTEC on that front. It will generate incremental profit. It will definitely advance our responsible gambling agenda. We will actually get real-time insight into the gambling patterns of our players. And it will keep the bucks in the province, or as many of them as we possibly can keep in the province, to do good work in Ontario. So that basically is the extent of my remarks here, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
What is the population of Ontario?
Population's about 13.5 million. Yeah. Adults just under 10.
Well, it's interesting because our lottery contributes $1 billion, and we're half the size, and
Yep.
you contribute $2 billion. So on a per capita basis, it's about the same.
It's about the same. Yeah, the Massachusetts business on the instant scratch and win is unparalleled anywhere in the world, and we look at that thirsting. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
I actually,
You may, yeah.
it's acceptable to, if it's acceptable to the commission, I've prepared an oral affirmative presentation. I don't have a slideshow, but I'd like to just sit here, maybe talk to you a little bit about what we do in Nevada. My goal is to give you just a brief overview of the Nevada Gaming Control Board, our regulatory structure, talk about what led up to internet gaming in Nevada, and then just give you a general idea of where we are currently. And feel free to, if you have questions along the way, to interrupt as we go. My name is Jim Barbie. I'm the Chief of the Technology Division with the Nevada Gaming Control Board, and thank you for considering us to come and speak with you today. I did have the opportunity to interact with your organization in the past, and it's been a great experience so far. I really appreciate the approach that you're taking. So to talk a little bit about Nevada and the Gaming Control Board, Nevada has a two-tiered regulatory structure. We have a Gaming Commission and a Gaming Control Board. Our Gaming Commission is a lay body. It consists of 5 members that are appointed by the governor. These are a group of people, they're part-time employees. They meet once a month. The purpose of the commission is to make final ruling decisions on all licensing matters in Nevada and to promulgate the regulations to govern gaming. The Nevada Gaming Control Board is the full-time body. The board's governed by, the board is led by 3 members. One of them acts as the chairman. The current chairman is A.G. Burnett. The board consists of 6 divisions. There's an audit and enforcement, a technology division. I usually save myself for last, so I've forgotten what the other guys are. Audit, enforcement, investigations, tax and license. Each of the divisions, we have a core set of responsibilities. My particular area of responsibility is gaming technology and any technology that's used in Nevada relative to gaming. The board has a staff of approximately 420 full-time employees. The technology division, my group, I have a staff of 25 professionals. They range from computer engineers to electrical engineers, computer scientists, mathematicians, and IT auditors. Throughout our discussion today, we're probably going to talk about tech standards and mix and regulations and whatnot. So I'd like to give you just a brief overview of the Nevada regulatory structure. It all starts at the state level. Our legislators get together and they come up with our statutes. So we might talk about NRS. The primary enabling legislation in Nevada is our NRS 463. It's called the Gaming Act. in Nevada. Below the NRS is our gaming regulation. Those are the daily requirements on the gambling industry. Those are crafted by our Gaming Control Board and approved by our Gaming Commission. The primary regulation in Nevada that deals with, we call it interactive gaming. I don't know who came up with interactive gaming, internet gaming, but we refer to it as interactive gaming. That's our regulation 5A and our regulation 14. Just below our regulations, we have two operating guidelines. We have what we refer to as the technical standards. That's how systems have to operate. For example, you have to have this many games in game recall. These are the standards that apply to a random number generator. These are geolocation requirements. Those are, again, the technical standards, and I'm responsible for those. We also have what we refer to as minimum internal control standards, MICs. Our MICs govern how the systems have to be operated. So the technical standards say how they have to work, and the MICs dictate how the operators use those systems. Our chief of audit is responsible for the internal controls. So that's a little bit of background on the Nevada Gaming Control Board Gaming Commission. To give you a little bit of history about how we got into internet gaming. In 2001, Nevada had its first enabling legislation, and that authorized the Nevada Gaming Commission to adopt regulations for internet gaming. And it also established the minimum demographics necessary to hold an operator's license. And I believe it was mentioned a little earlier today that that's our bricks and mortar and what size of location that had to be. Then we fast forward to 2011, and it was in 2011 that there were modifications or an amendment to the legislation, and that again made more clear the Nevada Gaming Commission's ability to adopt regulation, and it also established a couple of conditions that in order for us to offer internet gaming, we'd need to have some federal law authorizing internet gaming or have a notice from the Department of Justice that it was acceptable in Nevada. Well, it was pretty apparent in 2011 that there was activity on the federal front for interactive gaming, and that it was time for us to kick it into gear and start looking seriously at how are we going to regulate that. So in 2011, we started our regulatory process. That's where we started developing our regulations, and concurrently we developed our tech standards and internal controls. In December of 2011, I don't know if it was shortly the day after or the day before the Department of Justice released their opinion, but we did adopt our regulations to govern interactive gaming. And then in January of 2012, we adopted our internal controls and our technical standards. Throughout 2012, we were working with the industry to get systems online, to develop the technical or the system manufacturers and the development of their systems. And in 2013, there was an amendment to the 2011 legislative session, which removed the prohibitions removed the prohibitions about the federal law and requiring input from the Department of Justice, as well as it authorized our governor to enter into multi-state agreements with other jurisdictions where interactive gaming was legal. So now we fast forward to April of 2013. We had our first system go online. That was Ultimate Gaming. In September, our second system went online. That was the World Series of Poker brand with 888 as the manufacturer there. In February, just last month, we had our third system come online. That was it's Real Gaming. That's related to the South Point, an operator there in Vegas. And then most notably here last month, we had the interstate agreement signed between the governors of Delaware and Nevada. So that's a little history on how we got to regulating internet gaming. But to talk to you a little bit more about the details of what was involved in that process, and it had a lot to do with exactly the process was quite similar to what it appears you're doing here today. There was a steep learning curve involved. The first thing you have to figure out once you realize or you have the enabling legislation that it's legal, you have to figure out, okay, who do I license? How far into this space do we need to go? And I think for us, there was a lot to learn there. There's a lot more vendors that have critical impact on the operation of interactive gaming than, let's say, your bricks and mortar. In your bricks and mortar, I'm not saying that the payment processor or the folks who are bringing the cash, the brink truck that rolls up, isn't critical to that operation, but they're also, they don't have as great an impact on the potential integrity of that bricks and mortar, whereas in the online space, those operators, your payment processors, your KYC, your geolocation, they have a significant impact on the potential integrity of your industry. So you have to make that decision. How far into that space do I want to go as far as the licensing goes? Then as you delve into that space, the next decision is, how deep do I want to license those folks? As you go through the process to get a bricks and mortar license or a manufacturer's license, you're providing 20 years of tax records. You're basically getting a top secret, government top secret clearance. Do you need to apply that same level of licensure to the service providers? They're critical to the function of the industry, but do you have to go that deep? So that was another decision that we had made there. And Nevada established 3 tiers of investigations for licensure. Tier 1 is a full-blown licensing where basically you give carte blanche to do the investigation. It takes a bit of time and it's a bit more expensive. A Tier 2 review, I believe that one might cost in upwards of $10,000 tops. I believe $2,500. And that would apply to the ancillary service providers like those geolocation, the payment processors, and the KYC. And then a Tier 3 is for marketing affiliates. As you go and understand the interactive space, there are a lot of terms that get thrown around. So that was another area that we had to learn a little bit more about. Player liquidity, for example. Just in a recent meeting with a policymaker in my own organization, they finally asked, what is player liquidity? I hear that term all the time, but what does it mean to have players? Player liquidity, I know it's important, but what does it mean? Well, the more people you have, the more games you can offer. The more games you can offer, the more attractive it's going to be to potential players. If a person comes to the table and they want to play $5, $10 poker, but you don't offer it, well, they might go and watch TV instead. If, however, because you have a greater player liquidity base, you have more people who are interested in $5 and $10 tables, well, now you can actually offer one. So when the person goes to find a $5 or $10 table, it's available to them and they'll sit down and play. Little things like that, trying to define that common vocabulary. So what we did to define that or to establish that, we brought in through a series of training for all of our policymakers and people who would have influence or impact on the regulating internet gaming, we had training sessions. We brought in both industry professionals and professionals from professors from UNLV to first start off with, what is the internet? What is internet gaming? What does it mean if somebody talks about penetration testing? What does it mean if we talk about servers? What is a firewall? So let's establish that baseline. The next set of training we had was on fraud. Well, what are some potential internet fraud possibilities? What are the risks that we're potentially going to be faced with? And then we brought that training down even more focused and brought in some industry professionals that dealt specifically with internet gaming in foreign jurisdictions and whatnot. So there's a large learning curve there. So once you have a basic understanding, then you need to understand the technology that's involved. So we spent a fair amount of time, dealing with technology providers, having them come in and demonstrate their technology, talk to us about it. And one of the main questions you want to ask any technology provider when they come forward is not just how great, tell me how great your technology is, but tell me what's the risk that is involved in your field and how do you mitigate that risk? Once you get past, and I apologize to any technology providers out there, but once you get past their sales pitch, where they're telling you how great their technology is, and you get past them hoping that you're going to write their technology into your regulation, once you put that part aside and you get down to it, the technology providers are excellent educators. So I think what you really need to understand, or what we really tried to understand was, what don't we know? And let's talk to people who do know. So that was a large amount to our learning curve. Now that we've gotten the baseline established, the whole reason that we're here was for not only to offer entertainment for the patrons of our state, but there's tax revenue implications. So how do we report on that? We did define a very specific reporting infrastructure. We went so far as to say every system, regardless of who provides it, you have to have a report that's called this is what needs to be in this column, that column, and the other, and this is how you tie all of those together. So I think just overall, the learning curve was pretty steep. We had a short period of time to get up to speed on that. But I believe we're in a good position with it now, and I see like this forum is a prime example of you doing pretty much that same thing. Where are we now? We currently have 3 operators. As I mentioned, the most senior, Ultimate Gaming, they've been live since April. Then we had World Series of April of last year. World Series of Poker went live in September, and then the South Point or Real Gaming went live last month. With those systems, we're seeing with Ultimate Gaming, their 2nd and 3rd generation software submissions. These are including more patron bonuses, more variations on the games of poker, system enhancements and whatnot. The 888 World Series brand, that system is being approved, going through our final approval process now. They should get approved later this month. Once 888 gets approved, I believe they will be providing that system to 1 or 2 other operators in Nevada. So I expect within the next 3 to 6 months to see a few more operators coming online. And then with South Point, they're 3 weeks into it. As we went through the licensing process, Nevada has licensed 12 operators. That would be 12 bricks and mortar locations who can perform interactive gaming. We have 24 service providers. The service providers would be the manufacturers of the systems, the 888s, the Bally's, the IGTs of the world. And then we have approximately 30 secondary service providers licensed. And those would be the ones who provide the geolocation, the patron identification, and the KYC. More importantly, where are we as a regulator? Now we're at least a year into it. We see where we struck right on. We see where we were a little off base. So we're going through our regulatory structure now. We've made some recent changes to our patron protection in our regulations to adjust the limits that we had initially set. We're going through now to do a technical standard and an internal control review. And that's what I have for an affirmative presentation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your time. Rebecca, would you
Next.
mind? And while you're,
Do we have questions, Rick, or are you
excuse
going to skip questions? Or?
Questions.
Well, if you have time, yeah.
Sure.
I just, a couple quick ones. You only are licensing, only giving the option of offering internet gaming to bricks and mortar license holders
That's correct, sir, as the operator.
as the operator. And what are your revenue projections now compared to, what's your revenue performance compared to what your revenue projections were?
I'm not certain, and I would go with my friend up north, being a little hesitant to relay that information in a public meeting. First, because I don't know, and I'd hate to lead you down the wrong path. I think revenue projections, we may have projected slightly over what we're currently receiving, but I don't think we didn't have grand revenue projections based on our population size. I am familiar with accounts created and whatnot, and I do know that the accounts created information is consistent with what our projections were there. There's an excellent resource that's available online, and one of the things you'll learn is you can learn a lot online. There's a couple of websites. PokerScout.com, for example, is a great website to go and look at for information on the industry. You could log into PokerScout now and see how many people are playing on any particular site. But more importantly, the information you can get there is, I believe it was PokerStars, may have released up to 10 years worth of their demographic information worldwide. And there was a professor, maybe he was out of Germany, he put a paper together. It's a really good paper if you get the opportunity to read it, maybe University of Hamburg. And through the demographic information that he compiled, he went state by state and jurisdiction by jurisdiction. This is approximately how many poker players are available in that particular jurisdiction. Now, I know that the policymakers didn't look at that information, but I should remind you that I'm not the policymaker, I'm the technology guy, the nuts and bolts guy, tell you if it works or not. But I'm also a technology guy who goes on the internet and does a bit of research myself. And the information that was contained in that paper I'm seeing is consistent with what turned out to be the number of accounts that were created in Nevada.
Quick question, Jim. You have 12 operators. Now, everyone that's a licensee has the ability, if they choose to?
Everyone who is currently licensed, yes, they could. However, there are, in Nevada, we have, and I'm going to be a little off on my numbers, but we might have 3,000 licensees. Of those 3,000 licensees, maybe 2,000 to 2,500 we consider restricted locations. Those would be places with 15 or fewer slot machines. They're not eligible to receive an operator's license. You have to have a brick and mortar presence with a certain minimum number of hotel rooms, a certain minimum number, I believe a county with a certain number of people. And out of those, I don't know the potential there, maybe it's 200 to 400 of Nevada's current brick and mortar operators would be eligible for the license, but you do have to go and get the license. It's not de facto that you get it simply because you have an operator's license for brick and mortar.
To apply for it and qualify. And you have 3 systems, or I'm not sure your terminology, like PokerStar is one of the 3. If others want to participate, will they have the potential, or are you going to cap that number?
Sure, no ma'am. And PokerStars isn't in Nevada. That was the example. I believe they're the ones who released that data. We have 3 system providers, and when I talk about systems, that would be the manufacturers. The corollary would be to slot machine manufacturers, IGT Bally, Aristocrat, Konami. We have 3. We don't have a limit on the number who are eligible. We'll let the market dictate how that will play out. Of the 3 that are currently operating, there's 888, who's working with Caesars and the World Series brand. There is Ultimate Gaming. Ultimate Gaming is affiliated with Station Casinos. They're the manufacturer of the system as well as the operator. And then there's Real Gaming. Real Gaming is associated with the South Point, and they are also the manufacturer of the system as well as the operator.
Some of those systems participated when it was illegal, correct? How are you looking at that when deciding whether or not they are eligible to be an operator in Nevada?
I believe that was part of the legislation in 2013. At the state level, they established a covered asset and a covered person clause. Covered asset and covered person, the person would be the entity performing the operation, the asset may be the trade name. Anyone who accepted wagers after, what was it, December 12th, or that UEGA went into place in 2006, anyone who was found to have violated UEGA, I believe, has a 5-year minimum cooling off period before they could apply for a license in Nevada.
Thank you.
Rebecca, and when you commented, when you heard about the agreement between the 2 governors, maybe you can comment.
We'll get to
on
that. Yeah, that's definitely in the plan. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Rebecca Goldsmith,
Pull your mic up.
and I am the Assistant Director of the Delaware Lottery. And most recently, I was responsible. I'm not speaking. I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yeah.
Most recently, I was the project lead on the implementation for the iGaming launch in the state of Delaware. And really, it's that role that brings me here today to speak with you about some of the processes that we took to actually launch internet gaming and some of the hurdles and challenges that we faced, because certainly we've been in your shoes for sure. And to everyone's credit at this point, there's quite the learning curve. There's no doubt about that. In Delaware, we are a little unique relative to our counterparts in Nevada and New Jersey in that the state lottery is both the operator and the regulator of casino gaming in Delaware, meaning we've got ourselves a little more in the weeds maybe on the operational side than the average. And we have a particularly unique relationship with our 3 licensed video lottery agents that actually operate our casinos on the state's behalf. And you'll find I use a couple of unusual terms throughout this process. And really, in Delaware, there are 2 forms of gaming that are actually legal. One is lottery, the other is horse racing. And legislatively, over time, as gaming expanded, the term lottery sort of continued down that road. So for us, a video lottery machine is commonly known as a slot machine, and a video lottery agent would be a casino operator in our case. So you'll know what I'm referring to when you hear those terms. With us, our story really starts back in June of 2012 when the state legislature passed a Gaming Competitiveness Act that included many provisions, but the most relevant at this point is the legalization of internet gaming within Delaware. That particular piece of legislation basically required that our 3 casinos act as the front-end portals, offering the websites associated with their own names and brands, while the Delaware Lottery managed the platform or the system on the back end. So that's been a little bit of a unique component relative to our counterparts in the United States. And again, I think someone in the very beginning of today's session talked about not wanting to, and I wrote it down, jeopardize the goose that laid the golden egg with respect to your land-based casinos. And that was directly what was taken into account in this legislation here, is hoping to supplement that activity to create players both online and land-based, and to grow both businesses together. So I think we're all looking at the same topic, broadly speaking. So again, because we are a little bit unique in that we are a government agency responsible both for the operation and regulation of casino gaming, we too went to bid. So in January of 2013, we issued an RFP for an internet gaming and system solution. And in doing so, we also issued our technical specifications. So that came out in January, and once that process started, we immediately turned into the development of our regulatory environment. What were we going to do to regulate this new activity in the state? And we knew that we were really comfortable with our regulatory environment for land-based casinos and wanted to be prudent enough to use as much of those processes that we'd already established as possible, making reasonable modifications for your online environment. And I think to Jim's point, you're talking about who are you licensing? Instead of licensing somebody who's walking across your casino floor, now you're trying to license somebody who has access to your back-end technology to make modifications to tables and areas of your system. So dealing with security in that way. You know, and we did a couple of things to further our research. One was looking at other regulated environments, and I think we really looked at Spain, Italy. We looked to our friends in Nevada to see what they had already done going before us. Alderney, Malta, Gibraltar, and we reached out to other technical experts who had experience really ferreting through the degree of regulations that are out there. And I'll mention GLI currently as they sit in the back of the room because they're heavily involved in evaluating certain systems to various standards, and it was a really good opportunity for us to seek out technical input throughout the process. From there, as we designed our regulatory environment, we were making selections on our platform provider, and that for us ended up being Scientific Games and 888, who had co-bid for the business. Throughout that process, there were any number of multifaceted decisions that are going to have to be made, which payment options you're going to accept, how you're going to conduct your geolocation, how many fallbacks are you going to have, what exactly are you going to do, are you going to use the cell phone component with SMS delivery, how do you implement identification, verification, and quite frankly, for us on the operational side, how are we going to establish a new customer service group to accommodate the volume of inquiries and players that are going to be coming and having questions. So as we did that, we tried to look to the experience, again, unfortunately for Nevada, and both positively for Nevada, they went first, and we were able to try to glean from them some of what was going to happen to us next. And the two issues that really stood out were on the banking side and on the geolocation side, trying to get those as right as possible for what was really going on. And the first issue on banking was trying to find institutions that would accept deposits from players who were making internet gaming related deposits to our casinos. So all 3 casinos are very well established, well respected, have long-standing relationships with lending institutions in our state, but when they went to move forward to actually open up accounts where they could accept players' funds, that was a little bit of a different story. One of our casinos was immediately told no, and they had to go try to seek out an alternative company. The other 2 actually had accounts opened in a relatively brief period of time. We thought we were ready to go, and no kidding, 1 month before launch, the bank who had approved these 2 accounts be open started asking a number of questions related to the 2006 UAGA, related to our system verification checks, related to the 2011 Wire Act decision, and at some point, 3 to 4 weeks prior to launch, determined that they could no longer allow these accounts to be active and shut them down. So for us, that's a showstopper. If you can't accept funds and you can't accept deposited monies, you really can't gamble online, period. So it was a 180, a whole 180-degree spin, trying to find an institution that understood the legal offering that was being provided in our state, that was willing to accept whatever level of perceived risk was out there, and to move forward with prioritizing any kind of background checks and vetting process for our 2 casinos now, and to do all of that within a 3 to 4 week time frame. And we did it, and it was amazing. One particular institution really did a great job at sort of bridging that gap for us, and it didn't affect our launch. But those are the kind of things that you don't expect. Like you feel like you're in really good standing, and then all of a sudden something as big as that comes out of nowhere, and you're stuck scrambling. So we went through that. Another issue we tried to head off at the pass was credit card acceptance, which I think we've touched on earlier, and the dreaded Visa 7995 code. And the quick overview of that is there are something like 8,000 credit card issuing banks in the United States. And each one of those banks is allowed to decision on its own the various payments that come through. So 7995 is a code for internet gaming. So every transaction that Visa uses to deposit directly to an online casino carries that particular flag with it. And every Visa card issuing bank has the right to determine whether or not they want to accept that charge or decline it. Visa has an extremely high decline rate. In our situation, it's like 70% approval for MasterCard, 30% for Visa. So on the front end, we have an active card acquiring bank who is meeting regularly with the 2 card brands, trying to promote education on what's actually happening. But we also have another opportunity in our cashier to try to configure our system to help the player realize that if they're getting a decline, there are other methods of deposit that are available to them. And one of the things that we did was strategically allow our default in the credit card portion to be MasterCard. So that's the first one that you go to, and if the player wants to use a Visa, they certainly have that option. They pick from that drop-down menu, and when they do that, it triggers a reminder for them that allows them to understand that if their card is declined, it may be that their card issuer has a relatively high decline rate, and they can choose something else. So that once that person receives a decline, they're not gone forever. They understand that there is another alternative out there for them. And it's those kind of decisions, I think, that are really going to make the difference in the business being successful. It's how you communicate that to the individual player. So we started out on that front, I think, on a pretty good note. And then we got down to the geolocation piece. And I think geolocation, the way it's being used in the U.S. gaming industry is particularly new. And there are a wide variety of options that are going to be available to you. And at some point, as the regulative body, you have to come to terms with what degree of false declines are you going to accept. So there are going to be some people who are blocked from being on. They may be right at a peripheral boundary. They may be in a particular location, and it is going to happen. It's to what degree are you comfortable with it? And then looking forward, I think for us, we're really hoping that because this technology is so new, at least the way we're using it, that going forward, that's going to change. There's going to be a bigger refinement and more tools available to you so that you can kind of grow with the technology, grow with the industry, and move forward so long as you keep up on the technology and you understand like how we all are using it to make the best decisions possible for your particular business. So yeah, some margin of error is sort of to be expected, I think, at that point. And to Lindsay's, I think, comment earlier, it's the reasonableness standard as well. So anyway, that takes us through, we've gone through January, June contracting, decisioning, and then by late October, we actually launched with 3 online gaming casinos and I guess the nation's first shared liquidity poker room. So right now, when you log on to any one of our 3 casinos to play poker, those folks actually sit in a common location and play poker with each other. And what that does for us is that, again, it creates more games that are available at any time of day, more players who want to play at those particular stakes at the same time, et cetera. So the more folks you have coming on, the easier it is to find a game at the rate and time you like, and the more attractive and fun the whole process is. You know, as we went into launch, our real focus, kind of like I think everyone in this case, was the soft launch approach, really heavily focusing on the stability of the platform, of the back-end processes, of the games, making sure we didn't have any unanticipated issues. And then once we were comfortable with that, moving forward with a heavier marketing strategy. And I think what that's meant for us is more modest revenue growth, you know, in the first 4 months. And I think we were okay with that. But no matter what, as we turn our attention to acquisition, we still have to be cognizant of our demography and our geography. So in Delaware, we're a small state. You can go from the northernmost piece to the southernmost piece in roughly 2 hours. Our population is 900,000 people. Of that, some portion of them are of legal gaming age, of those who are of legal gaming age. Some of them want to play, you know, online, some don't, et cetera. So as you get down to it, you are restricted by your boundaries. And that's what made this multi-jurisdictional agreement with Nevada so important, is the legal framework that was established and announced in February allows the two states the latitude to try to combine a poker room so that you can attract more players, make your game more fun, and allow more offerings to occur. And again, it was just a legal framework that was established. Now we've got to work on how to actually do that technically. But it was a major first step. And I think that really takes us in Delaware to where we are now. And then moving forward, the conversation is really focusing again on mobile, alternative forms of gaming, et cetera. So I think that's it in a nutshell.
Right.
Question?
Can I ask a question about that legal framework? Has there been any challenges to that cooperation? Is that in somebody's mind crossing state lines, whether it takes place in cyberspace or not?
No, I think that's the entire purpose of the multi-jurisdictional agreement, is that if you've got the two entities saying, like Nevada and Delaware, that we agree between ourselves that our players adhere to what I'm going to call the traditional geographic limitations, which are your players are in Nevada, our players are physically in Delaware, but they're actually allowed to play in a common poker room. And again, playing a game that's actually legal in both spots. So in Delaware, we have what we call a full-scale offering. You can play table games, poker, or slot machines. And then in Nevada, it's the poker product. It's really legal. So for us, we're restricted by that piece. So what we're offering is a shared liquidity poker room, because that's legal in both locations. Did I answer?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm curious, why do you think the credit card companies have such high or different levels of rejections? Are they conducting a credit analysis, a risk analysis of every player?
We have actually, one of our partners, Vantiv, is very active in this particular area, and I would sort of encourage you to speak with them because they are so heavily involved monitoring what's actually happening and doing outreach. I think part of it is a business decision, a risk aversion business decision by the individual issuing banks, period. And I think it's that long-standing belief from that 2006 Unlawful Internet Gaming Enforcement Act saying that you will be sanctioned by the federal government if you allow transfers of funds for these purposes. And it's when you had that 2011 Wire Act decision come forward, it's a matter of adjusting to history of declining that 7995 code under all circumstances. And so in our state, what we tried to do was meet with the Bankers Association to educate them as to what was legal, what's not legal, what we do in our state to authenticate who you are, validate identification, et cetera, and then help them do outreach with local banks. And I think it's that process, it's that communication that's going to take some time for everyone to come to terms with a sea change. That you're used to this being an illegal process and that you've spent all this time trying to prevent it, and now you can open the doors a little bit. It's okay here, it's okay in like certain jurisdictions to accept But it's the same conversation happening throughout the United States, throughout the card brands. It's not specific to, I think, any one of us. We're all struggling. And we're seeing improvement, but it's a process.
Who owns the player data in your model?
In our model, the player data is actually owned by the individual casinos.
Yeah.
But we have the authority to have access to it at any time.
Right.
They're competing with each other, so they don't want to share player data amongst themselves, but as a lottery, we are able to see all of it.
Rebecca, is there a difference? I'm looking at something that shows kind of a varied tax rate. Can you explain why you may or may not have a varied tax rate?
The rates for internet gaming actually follow our land-based tax rates.
Okay.
So the revenue sharing agreement is like 43.5% for table games and 29.4%, I believe, for video lottery. And so, and that's the intent for the legislature to support this activity and to continue mirroring what's going on in land-based.
Okay.
But otherwise, it's no different online than what it is in our land-based casinos.
In your revenue projections, because you obviously have a lot of people hitting the Delaware beaches and shores during the summer, do you see, was there revenue modeling which showed probably a higher percentage of usage during the summer?
I think we're trying to stay away from that conversation, honestly, as much as possible. And I think it's been interesting because, again, we're the regulators, not the policymakers.
Right.
And so it's trying to be realistic about, again, what's actually happening in our state, the attractiveness of the product. But we are hoping that the tourism season, it will be a good opportunity to attract new players, to use that acquisition for those folks who are coming from outside, give them something else to do while they're here, et cetera.
Okay. Thank you.
We better move on to, thanks, Rebecca, we might be back if we end up with any time, but we better get to Eric. Eric, if you would, it seems when you and I were talking about, we're kind of used to, we're interested in regulation, we walk on the casino floor and take a look. I think you commented to me as well that you've been working on monitoring specifically for internet gambling and how that might come about. So if you would, as you go in your comments, please mention it, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. Again, I'd like to repeat what everyone is saying and thank all the commissioners for having us here. It's a great opportunity to let everyone know about the good things that are happening in New Jersey. I'll try to be a little bit more brief and to give more time for you guys to question because I know we are pressed for time. Really, in New Jersey, this whole process started, you know, we dove headfirst into, and everybody thinks it happened very quickly, like 9 months from the time the bill was authorized to the rollout of internet gaming in New Jersey. But it really started more like 2 years prior when we passed a legislation that authorized mobile gaming inside of a casino. So that legislation basically said that mobile doesn't necessarily mean it's a handheld device, it's just that you can have gaming, in-room gaming, mobile gaming inside the four walls of a casino. Okay, so when that legislation was passed and we started researching how we were going to regulate that, we recognized very quickly that the technology behind mobile gaming in a casino is the same technology behind the internet gaming. You know, you have your account-based wagering, you got your geolocation issues, those type things. So we really, at that point, started researching the internet regulations, and we knew that if the governor ever passed the legislation, we'd be in a better place to regulate it. So that's really what gave us the foundation, and the legislation eventually came out, and the governor was very clear that he wanted this legislation to, one, address responsible gaming issues. He was very concerned about that. And the other one, that it was intended to revitalize Atlantic City to help our casinos. So our model, really, and I know there's going to be some discussion about can internet and casinos and lotteries coexist. And the idea in New Jersey was that, yeah, there's a synergy there, and that it would help our casinos. Only casino licensees can offer internet gaming. And it's no secret, there's been a lot of competition in our borders, and people are leaving the state out of convenience. So the people that live along those borders now can gamble online in Atlantic City. Our Atlantic City casinos can maybe reach out to people that have never had a relationship before. And what's good with internet gaming is that you can't do anything anonymously. So you know who the players are, you know where they're coming from, and you know what value they are to your organization from the standpoint of how much they play, so that you can market to them better. So that's the background really that introduced internet gaming and authorized it, and how we got to where we are with the legislation. New Jersey right now, we think, is in a good place from a regulatory standpoint. We currently have 6 casinos that have received permits that are authorized to conduct internet gaming and are conducting internet gaming. We had 100 new companies come to New Jersey and go through the licensing process, and Jim talked about the different levels of licensing depending on the kind of work that you do or service that you offer. It's very, very similar in New Jersey as it is in Nevada. From the systems side, we test and approve the equipment ourselves in-house. We have a lab, and we tested and approved 7 internet gaming platforms. We offer casino games and poker, so of those 7 platforms, 4 are currently approved for poker. We have 4 RGS, remote gaming systems or servers, approved, and we have about 250 casino games authorized to be conducted in Atlantic City, and we're still getting submissions and we're still approving them. And it was an aggressive schedule that we had, and one of the things that I've heard discussed in the industry is that New Jersey had this huge hiring process in order to get ready for internet gaming, and that wasn't really the case in New Jersey today. Today, we have less staff than we had when internet gaming was passed. So you ask, how did you do that, right? So we had attrition, obviously. We restructured the organization and reallocated staff, especially from the licensing standpoint. And we did hire, we did strategic hiring, cybersecurity people, network administrators, DBAs, those type of people to bring in to help us through this process. We also hired an internet gaming consultant, Mario Galea, who was a regulator in Malta. He was the chief regulator in Malta. But he also so he's experienced from the standpoint of licensing, which is very important to us, and all these companies that are overseas in Europe that he's licensed now in New Jersey. So he gave us some good insight there, and he's also very technical. So he's an ethical hacker, he's an electrical engineer. So it was a very good fit for New Jersey as a consultant. From the operations standpoint, we're seeing a tremendous amount of patron growth. We're averaging around 37% of increase month to month on new patron registrations, new patron accounts. Today we have about 248,000 patron accounts in New Jersey, and from a revenue standpoint, we're seeing a 23% growth. Now, I don't want to get into projections kind of like Jim and Rebecca here, but I could talk about facts. So we're at 23% revenue increase month after month, and we've generated over $26 million in internet gaming revenue. And there's another point to talk about with internet gaming revenue that I've heard talked about out there and have read, and that's that poker is the economic driver on the internet, and it's poker that is the one that's the most important to have. In New Jersey, at least, the experience that we've had is that casino games account for about 70% of all gross gaming revenue, and poker's only about 30% at this point. And that's, that's not across the board. There are some casinos that have partnered with an internet gaming provider that really is more poker-centric, but even in those cases, casino games outpace the poker on the internet world, at least in New Jersey. So it's still early right now, we're still in the infancy stages of gaming. I don't know if these numbers are going to change or how that's going to play out. So that'll be interesting to watch as we progress through this. We talked a little bit about some of the challenges, and clearly geolocation and payment processing have been issues in New Jersey, just like probably have been in every jurisdiction. From the payment processor side, primarily, Rebecca talked about the 7995 designation for the MCC code versus the 9754. And 9754 is a different code that MasterCard uses, which helps them get more percentage of approvals through the credit card processing. But what's very interesting, well, let me just talk about credit card processing and the real issue. The real issue are the issuing banks and how much risk they're willing to accept. So they look at things like regulatory risk, they look at financial risk. Those are the two key issues that they're dealing with, right? Rebecca talked about for all these years, 7995 is bad, you can't do it. And the regulatory risk, in some cases, they're scared that they're going to face that from the federal government. So what we've done is we've worked with the Department of Banking, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, to really talk to them about what's going on, the problems we're dealing with, the fact that it is legal in New Jersey, and we're hoping that we get an advisory issued from those organizations within the next couple of months. We're very hopeful that that'll happen. So that'll alleviate some of the regulatory risk. The financial risk, which is really, really interesting, is that if you look at, people talk about fraud being a problem and things like that with internet gaming, and there's going to be problems financially with those aspects of it. But if you look at chargebacks, okay, as a measure of that risk, financial risk, the reality is that in New Jersey, we're running at around 20 basis points, which is tremendous. It's very, very good. It's a very low level of financial risk, especially when you compare it to online retailers and people like that who are running at 50 to 100 basis points. So from the standpoint of financial risk, it's very low. So that information needs to get out. It needs to get out to the banks. And as that does, I think you're going to see a higher rate of approval. We're already seeing 78% of the transactions from MasterCard getting through. We're seeing currently from Visa 44%, so it's a lot better. It started at around 10% of those transactions we're getting through. We're now at about 44%, which is very good, so we're doing well. Really, there's two primary methods. It's ACH transfers. I think that Tim Richards talked about that earlier in his presentation, and it's credit card transactions. And now the casinos are getting very creative with some of the other payment methods, but they account for very, very little when it comes to the total number of patron deposits. And those are the kind of things you're going to be dealing with from the standpoint of pay, because you can't fund your accounts, you can't game. So the other issue I'd like to talk a little bit about is the geolocation issue, and I know Lindsay presented up here, and what's very similar between us and Massachusetts is density of population. The number of people you have around your borders is very high. So that if you have a large buffer, you exclude a lot of people from being able to gamble. So it was very important to us that we were able to get very close to the borders as part of the geolocation process. And as we were evaluating the different technologies that could be used, we became concerned that they could be defeated or circumvented, each individual one individually. And when we talked to the director about some of the challenges there were, he made it very clear to us. He made it clear that he wanted not a reasonable assurance, he wanted more than reasonable assurance that this geolocation process can't be defeated and that it would work properly. So we really, what we did is we issued an advisory. Our regulations are very vague. It just has to be effective. It has to make sure that the people that are gambling are in the state of New Jersey. But we had a team that evaluated all the technology and came up with an advisory, a baseline, if you will, of what we would expect. And we challenged the industry to come back and propose to us how they can meet that standard. They didn't necessarily have to do it the way we suggested you had to do it, but they had to address the issues. And Lindsay talked about some of the things that she does, and you asked her questions about anti-spoofing and things like that. So there are things that she didn't talk about that are built into their system that really raises the bar. They're really it's very difficult to circumvent those controls the way they have them implemented. It gives us a very high level of assurance that it's working. And one of the, I don't know if it's a misrepresentation or a misnomer about what's happening with regard to geolocation, that the geolocation is this big issue. It's not. The reality is, as Rebecca talked about, is there's some people that are just not going to be able to gamble because they don't have Wi-Fi, for instance, in their house, or they're in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, and we can't geolocate them well. So there's going to be instances that you are in New Jersey, you just can't gamble. But the data shows that 95% of the geolocations that come through, of all geolocation tests, are passing. The 5% that are not passing, some of those are from people outside the state of New Jersey, and some of them are from what we call false negatives or false positives, people that are in New Jersey, but for environmental reasons or technological reasons, they can't be geolocated to the satisfaction of the state, so they can't gamble. I think part of that was a growing process too, because these casinos have partnered with vendors that have been doing business in Europe, and geolocation is not the issue in Europe as it is in the United States, because they implement it from a national level, and we're implementing it on a state-by-state basis. So we have to geolocate those borders. And just educating the consumer when they're calling the help desk and telling them, you have remote desktop software on there, and this is the reason. Just how you treat your customers when they dial in helps alleviate a lot of those concerns. And I read there was an article today in the paper that said New Jersey relaxed its standards for the geolocation, and that's just simply not true. We've never done that. So if you see that, it's not true. I think things are getting better. We're having a 95% pass rate, and part of that's through education. Part of that's people starting to understand the technology. So it's important to note that for all of you. Rick, just lastly, talked about the monitoring tools that we use in New Jersey. So it was very important to us that, the data could not be compromised, right? You're collecting a whole bunch of data about everybody. So there's a couple of things that we've done, and this has been a real challenge for us. One of them was from the land-based experience that we've had, you look at all the different casinos, and every casino individually has their own slot monitoring system, whether it's SDS, IGT, ACSE, right? And so when our investigative staff would go out and they'd have to do an investigation and interrogate data, or our revenue certification people would go out in the field, they had to learn individual systems. They had to understand the data structures of those systems in order to perform SQL queries and things like that. So with the internet world, what we did is we created what we call an XML schema. What we decided to do was to standardize all of this data. So we said, this is how we want it, this is the information we want you guys to give us, this is the format we want it, and this is how we want you to do it, okay? So that it's standardized. You don't have to learn system to system to system, we just have the data that we need to interrogate, and it's available to us. And we take SHA-1 signatures of that data, and the casino has to maintain that, and they transfer that data to us as well. So they have, the casino's the one that's really responsible for the data storage, and the SHA-1, SHA-1's a digital signature of the data that they've generated. We have all those digital signatures locally in our system so that we know that the data hasn't changed from the time it was generated, so that we can do our investigations. So from a monitoring standpoint, the data issue is a very important one. The other thing we're doing, and if you come, we've done tours for people, as they come through our offices, we have these monitors, and one of the things is our geolocation monitor, and Lindsay showed you these pin drops. You can see actively people getting geolocated in New Jersey. It's kind of neat. You can see geographically where they are, and you see the red pins come in, and you can click on that and say, oh, this is the reason this person didn't get through. He has remote desktop processing software. But we also use a tool called Nagios, and Nagios is an external monitoring tool, and what we do with that is we've automated a process where we're remotely pinging each individual website, hey, are you there, are you there? So we know when the systems are up. We're taking SHA-1s of the digital signatures of their terms and conditions, the player protection page, so we know if they ever change. We have high visibility remotely. From an internal monitoring perspective, we have installed data collectors, or basically servers behind the firewall of every casino, and we have insight. We can monitor all of the internet traffic that's coming in, the HTTPS traffic, VPN traffic from behind the firewall and behind the network. So we can see everything that all of the transactional data and what's happening behind the firewall, where it's going. So that we, basically it's an investigative tool. There's certain transactions, you can see the volume of the data, you can see how much data, you can see data going from New Jersey out to Europe, and it's an investigative tool. So you find out, what is going on, why is this happening? And then, what you see is you get accustomed to the normal transactions, and then all of a sudden something will pop up that's out of the ordinary, which would spark an investigation. So from an external monitoring standpoint, internal monitoring standpoint, we have a high level of insight into what's going on in those regulated systems. And then you have the lab. So everything that can be used out in the field has to come through our lab. Our engineers and statisticians know these systems inside and out. And everything that comes in, any critical system, so anything that is revenue related, game outcome related, anything that the systems do to comply with regulations would be considered a critical function. All that stuff has to come through the lab, has to be tested. We get a digital signature of all the stuff that comes in, and that's how we know what we've approved in the lab is what is out in the field. We're part of the change control process through something called release notes. We require the casinos, once something's approved, that they have to notify the division when they want to install it. we've gone and we've gone to every IT shop, and we've analyzed the architecture, their network architecture. We've sealed all of their game hardware with with division seals, so that we've inventoried all of their systems with division serial numbers, so that we know exactly what's out in the field. And if a seal's broken, there has to be a notification to us. So that's how we keep control of the hardware that's out there. The release notes and the software process, through the release notes, we have visibility into all the changes and what is actually running out there. They really can't do anything without us having visibility into it. So that's basically it in a nutshell of how we regulate and what we're doing from the standpoint of monitoring. So if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
One quick question. Eric, you said there was a 23% increase, is that correct?
Correct.
Is that on average? Are those individual facilities, is there a decrease in the number of folks or the revenue in the actual casino itself?
Yeah, right now, we're not seeing that, but like I said, this is.
It's early.
It's early. So in the long run, we hope, and it's really designed that, you'll be able to market to new people, you'll have new relationships. Start a poker tournament online, finish it in Atlantic City. So we hope to see positive correlation. Growth in internet, growth in casino visitation in Atlantic City. Time will tell whether that happens or not.
Eric, you made, you said something about 70% of something was casino games, and 30% of that was poker.
Correct.
I missed what
Okay,
those
so
figures were.
in New Jersey, all forms of casino games are authorized. We talk about the regulatory model in New Jersey. Only casinos can use it, and only casinos can offer internet gaming, kind of like what they do with Jim Barbie, but we offer all forms of gaming like Delaware does. We also offer, which no one has done yet, is live casino games online, which would be streaming, and we've seen that in Europe where they've done it very effectively, where you're playing with a live person spinning a roulette wheel, and our regulations authorize that. So the revenue associated with casino games, which would include roulette, blackjack, craps, and slot machines, so that's casino games,
Right.
70% of all gross gaming revenue is coming from those.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you about is what is the permitting scheme? If you have a casino license, you can get permitted to run internet
Yes.
gaming, right? Can you get more than one permit? I've read, I thought, things about the casino operators getting more than one permit and then having
Well,
others.
there's really no, I think what you're referring to is the internet gaming platform. So a casino would only have one permit to offer internet gaming.
Right.
A licensee. Now, how many internet gaming platforms, like 888 can be a platform provider, which provides the back office and thing like that, and then BWin may also be a provider. So what we did was, for the opening, we limited the number of platform providers that a licensee could hold, and we limited that to one.
Got it. Thanks.
We're running over. I had a question, but I think maybe we ought to move along, just because we're running over a little bit.
We're at break time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'd like to get the next panel started, please. If we could the panelists come forward?
Well, exactly.
Very close quarters. It was not me. You'll notice mine has no light.
One of the interesting and valuable things about this industry that I think all of us on the Gaming Commission have been learning is the willingness of people from other jurisdictions who've been through these things to come and share their concerns and their information, their insights with us. This afternoon now, we're going to try to pull together some of the things that we've heard during the course of the day and try to get some thoughts and opinions about policy and the way forward, at least at a high level. There are many aspects of this that we could talk about, and I've selected several of them that I'd like to talk about with this very distinguished and very balanced and varied panel. I'm not going to read all of their biographies. They're distinguished, each of them. Their biographies are in the handouts that you have, and if I read the biographies, we'd have 10 minutes left for the program. So let me simply introduce them in the order in which they appear in front of you. To my immediate right is Senator Jennifer Flanagan from Leominster. She's the vice chair of the Committee on Ways and Means of the Massachusetts Senate and has had a distinguished career in that body. Next to her is Senator Bruce Tarr from Gloucester. He's the minority leader of the Massachusetts Senate, has had an equally distinguished career. They're both very thoughtful people who have filed bills coming from slightly different directions, dealing with internet gaming that I hope we can talk about a little bit this afternoon. Next to Senator Tarr is Stephen Martino. He's the director of the Maryland State Lottery and Gaming Control Agency. He's had a long career in the gaming industry, was on the Kansas Lottery Control Board before coming to Maryland, and has got great experience. Next to him is Vernon Kirk, the director of the Delaware Lottery. We've heard about Delaware and what it's just gone through, and I want to loop back and talk about some more of those things as we proceed. Next to him is George Sweeney, the Senior Vice President of Charitable and iGaming for the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation. We heard his presentation a minute ago, and we'll loop back there too and get some additional information. Next to his right is Chuck Bunnell. He's the Chief of Staff for External and Governmental Affairs for the Mohegan Tribe, involved with Mohegan Sun's activities and a long career in this industry and in legislative relations and liaison. To his right is Kim Sinatra, the Senior Vice President and General Counsel and Secretary of Wynn Resorts, and has had a career in various aspects of the legal end of the entertainment industry, I think is fair to say, on a broader scale. Next to her is Tom Beauchamp. He's the Senior Vice President of IT for Penn National Gaming, our licensee, since 2 weeks ago. And next to him is Marcus Prater, who's the Executive Director of the Association of Gaming Equipment Manufacturers, a nonprofit organization that represents the interests of the gaming manufacturers, gaming equipment manufacturers. And so we're going to spend some time talking about a series of questions that come out of the discussion that we've been having during the course of the day. And then I'm going to ask at the end for each of these distinguished panelists to take just a minute to leave us with one big thought. What is it that they'd like the Commission to carry away from this gathering with respect to internet gaming? I think it'd be a shame if we let such a distinguished group go away without getting that last nugget, and so that's the way we'll end the program. But to begin with, let's take a look at what's going on right now. And I'm going to ask, going on right now in the relationship between the lottery, the brick-and-mortar casinos, the internet, where that relationship exists and where parts of it exist without all three legs of the stool. And I'm going to start by asking Stephen Martino, if I might, to tell us a little bit about the relationship between the brick-and-mortar casinos in Maryland, which are growing by the moment, and the lottery, which, and I asked that question to begin with because where they are, despite a slightly different regulatory mechanism, is where we will be when the final license is issued. They've got a strong lottery. They will have, and do have a strong casino presence, as will we. So, Stephen, could you give us some thoughts about that?
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. It's always nice to be in Boston. So I bring a little bit different perspective than maybe what you experience in Massachusetts, because In Maryland, we are the Lottery and Gaming Control Agency. So we are the owner, operator, marketer, chief encourager of the traditional lottery, which in this state is obviously operated by the Massachusetts Lottery. But we are also, as part of our work, the regulator of the commercial casino industry that is growing. We have 4 casinos open. We'll have another one in downtown Baltimore that'll open in July or August, September sometime. And then we will have a 6th and final casino that will open in suburban Washington, D.C. sometime in 2016. So we are in some ways both complementary and in conflict with ourselves. We are encouraging people to play the lottery, while on the casino side, we are strictly a regulator. We're calling balls and strikes, and making sure that we have good, clean operations in the state, which we do. Obviously, you have internet that has creeped into the discussion. Obviously, with internet operations now going on in New Jersey and with our neighbor to the east in Delaware, we're keeping a close eye on that. And we have tried to kind of parse out how internet operations could potentially look in Maryland. Obviously, we are subject to the approval of the legislature and perhaps even a constitutional vote on that, so it's not imminent. But we think it's important to map out and encourage both of the participants, the traditional lottery, which we think would be appropriate to have a presence in internet lottery sales, and the casino operators, and they would want to offer gaming like is done in Nevada and New Jersey and Delaware, and make sure that everyone kind of knows what lane they're in. So in Maryland, we have staked out the notion, subject obviously again to approval by the legislature, that the lottery itself would be the operator, marketer of a traditional lottery sales platform on the internet, while we would work and be the regulator of internet gaming, with an idea that we would really want to focus the benefits of that and the operations with the 6 traditional commercial casino license holders, the brick and mortar license holders in the state. We think that that's appropriate, given the fact that in some cases they will be making close to $1 billion worth of investment into their casino, brick and mortar casino infrastructure in the state. And that seems to have been generally well received. Now, whether we go the New Jersey model and allow each casino to operate their own platform, or whether the legislature might think it best to go more of a Delaware route and have a more of a central operating system and have each casino skin their own front, but be able to benefit from the marketing efforts that they would put in. Those are public policy decisions that have not been contemplated, haven't been made. But we clearly see a divergence between the traditional lottery and the commercial casino enterprise, and think that both can coexist. And so that's kind of where we've mapped out initially in this new world of the internet.
The lottery was there first, Stephen, and then the casinos came. What, if any, measures were taken to preserve the lottery's space, if you will, and what observations have you made with respect to that space and the casino space since the casinos arrived?
Well, I don't think that much was done to preserve the lottery space. We have started to see some cannibalization of traditional lottery sales because of the casinos. We opened 2. The first 2 casinos that opened in the state were modest. Penn National opened what ended up being about 1,150 slot facility in northeast Maryland. Then there was an 800 slot facility that opened on the eastern shore, close to Ocean City. Had no effect on traditional lottery sales. Then Maryland Live opens, starts with 4,750 slot machines. That's been reduced, but they've now added table games. They now have close to 140 table games, a 50-room or 50-table poker room. In the last fiscal year that ended June 30th of 13, our traditional lottery sales were down about 2.5%. We're down another about 2.1% as of this week in traditional lottery. I think that it was anticipated, maybe not to that degree, and we've actually put out some consulting help to try to project what the long-term impact is going to be to our traditional lottery from the casinos. But and we talked about this a little bit at lunch, so I'm prepared. Overall, when you combined the revenue that comes from the traditional lottery and from the casinos, in fiscal year 13, we were up $179 million from the previous year, which was an increase of 27.6%. So actual money coming into the state is increasing. It's just obviously we're seeing a shift in where some of that discretionary entertainment spending is being done. We're particularly being affected in our Keno. We have a very robust Keno operation. We have the second highest per capita sales in the United States in our Keno game. We're seeing some effects on our scratch-off tickets. We know that those are the most casino-like games that we offer, and people are now able to easily access a very large, very nice commercial casino, where frankly the payouts are higher and they're voting with their dollars.
Vernon, Kirk, you too have both of those. You have a lottery and you have casinos. You also have the internet. We've heard about that, and I want to come back and talk a little bit more about that later. But how do you see, and you have a different regulatory structure as well, but how do you see the relationship between now the internet, the casinos, and the lottery?
There's a peaceful coexistence between all three, since the lottery runs all three. So everything we do in conjunction with the casinos, and starting with the internet. That was an effort that was, as Rebecca mentioned earlier, came out of the Delaware Gaming Competitiveness Act of 2012, and it was done in consultation with the casinos and allowed them to have the portals where you could access them. So we think everything is the coexistence between all those genres are really good for us. Our only problem is sitting next to me on my left here, Director Martino and his fantastic casinos. Our traditional products are up 8%. Our table games are down 30%, and our video lottery is down about 12%. So that's our biggest competition right now is Maryland. That's why we have. That's why we had the Gaming Competitiveness Act, was to try to fend these things off. But every time we introduce something, the surrounding states also jump in. We started with video lottery in '94. We added sports betting in '09 through the casinos. We added table games in '10 through the casinos. We added internet gaming in '12 through the casinos. It's all tools in the toolbox to try to compete with some of our more ambitious neighbors, shall we say, including Pennsylvania, not just, thank you, Steve. Including Pennsylvania, of course.
Friendly competition we've brought here today. Did one enters the internet, the online casinos through the lottery portal? One can do that.
Through the casino portal.
But it's on the there's a link on the page.
We operate the platform, but you can't get on by going to delottery.com. You got to go to one of our 3 casinos and log on there to get on the internet.
All right.
We're transparent. You can't see us in the background. It says, Delaware Park, on the back of the card, but when the ace turns over, we control that.
So you host the internet sites, but it's you do so transparently. So,
correct.
Right. Marcus Prater, you have some statistics, very early, very preliminary, but some statistics nonetheless, and I think they're in part of everybody's packet, dealing with the symbiosis or lack thereof between internet players and casino players. Could you touch on some of the highlights of
Sure.
what those statistics show? And maybe tell us a little bit about how they were compiled and when.
Right. So my background's in marketing, and so I'm also an online consumer in Nevada where when sports betting came to my iPhone, it dramatically reduced the number of visits I would make to my local casino every week, and I have been waiting to see how the local casino operations, respond to that, and how they cross-market, cross-promote the idea of being able to bet on your phone, but also, don't forget to come visit us at the casino. So that's been in my mind as New Jersey has rolled out, and when I was in London for the ICE show in late January, Clarion Events, which runs the ICE show, published a study through their commercial intelligence division, and it was basically, it's a survey of 506 active online players in New Jersey. It's really the first study of
of some of the habits that have been taking place in New Jersey. And again, the full bullets are in your packet, but some of the highlights for me, when I thought about the cannibalization issue, were 35% of online players surveyed were new to online gaming in New Jersey since November 2013 when gaming went live. So there was a lot of people playing illegally, still are, but these 35% represented, new players that had never even dabbled in the online space. 38% of those who previously played on illegal sites had now migrated to approved sites. So that's certainly a good news, but still leaves a lot of room for the rest of the players that are still playing. This survey was of online players total, not just the approved sites, but the illegal sites as well. There's clear brand correlation between land-based casinos and online brands used by New Jersey players. I think we've seen that in the results with the Borgata and Caesars in particular. 97% of New Jersey online players also gamble in land-based casinos, but actually visited relatively infrequently. 48% visit a casino a couple times per year or less. 29% visit at least monthly, and 18% visit casinos only once per year. So, it shows that these players are not multiple visitors to the land-based, and then now they're staying home playing online. The other interesting thing, certainly new online players are influenced by promotions in general, and 35% are influenced by promotions that can be redeemed at the land-based casinos, with hotel stays being the most important promotional offer. 79% of online players expect to visit land-based casinos as frequently as before, or feel that they are now more likely to visit. And then separately from the study, in some of the quarterly reports, the Borgata has noted that 85% of its online players were not recently rated players at the casino. So it's very early, but the whole cannibalization issue is one to keep an eye on. And so far, New Jersey, I think they're trying different marketing offers to get people to come to the casinos and also sign up, and I think that over time the different offers, when the players start responding over more than just a few months period, then we'll have a better idea of what that is going to look like in the future.
What's the big picture you take from this preliminary and recognizing that it is
Well, I think it's good news. Again, I've talked to, I have not obviously been able to play from Nevada, but I did talk to several New Jersey players on the phone, and they've frankly been a little disappointed in the amount of marketing. Other than the sign-up bonuses and so forth, they also expected that they would get more marketing messages from the land-based, to come visit the property, or, again, using my sports book analogy, that when you log on and there's no offers that entice you, then the one guy I talked to, he said he has not visited a land. He lives in Fort Lee, and he has not visited either Bethlehem or Atlantic City since the online went live. And part of the reasons he cited was simply because they hadn't made it attractive enough for him to get in the car and drive. So, I think the survey of the players is good news in terms of the attitudes and the idea of staying tied to the land base, but I think that the land-based casinos have to step up and keep trying new marketing offers to see which ones the players respond to.
George, thank you, Marcus. George Sweeney, as I understood your presentation here a few moments ago, you're about to roll out the Play OLG as a unified package of internet offerings, all of which are run by the corporation. And you are going to roll those, you presently have for branded operators of destination casinos. Do you anticipate an impact on them from what amounts to a new source of potential competition?
Jim, I mean, much like my colleague Vern to my left, I don't think we're going to see that kind of cannibalization. What we'll be looking for down the road is where we can leverage the synergies. So OLG does have 4 of its sites that are operated by the private sector, Caesars, Penn, and FMC. We also have 20 sites that OLG operates themselves. And so, as I said earlier, we've got the lottery business, the casino business, soon to come the internet business, and the bingo business. And our challenge down the road will be, how do we collect the synergies amongst all of them? From what I have seen as I look around the world, either in the UK, our colleagues in British Columbia, Quebec, and Atlantic Canada, is we've not seen cannibalization as they've introduced various forms of internet gaming. For instance, in the lottery side, there have been high level of concerns with lottery retailers about cannibalization. Hasn't happened. It's all been incremental. And that would be consistent from jurisdiction to jurisdiction that we've had a look at. So don't want to make arbitrary decisions for our consumers. We want them to be able to make choices, and we have to figure out how to leverage the synergy between the various channels.
Is there a collaborative exercise enterprise with the destination casinos to deal with that? I'm sure you've talked to them.
Not at this point, but in the bigger picture at OLG, in this program called modernization, we're actually going to move more to the private sector model, and we're going to outsource the operations of all of our casinos. So as our thinking evolves in that effort, we will be looking to, again, you got to respect the criminal code, OLG must conduct and manage, but white labeling sites for casino operators in our PAM is certainly something that we are thinking hard about, and again, figuring out what's that synergy between the branded land-based casino and OLG's internet offering.
Thanks. Tom Beauchamp, you and I talked some time ago, and your biography reveals what we talked about, that your background is, you spent a lengthy time in general merchandising with some of the biggest retailers in the country. And you told me that you looked at the development of the internet today, internet gaming today, the way you looked at the development of e-commerce about 15 years ago. And I wonder if you could offer some thoughts on that, and, as to the parallels you see with respect to the development, and then moving into the future, what you might anticipate.
Thanks for saying it was only 15 years ago. It's actually been longer. But, first of all, I'd like to thank the Commission for the vote of confidence in awarding a license to Penn. We're very excited to be here in Massachusetts. And I do view the internet as another channel as opposed to a replacement. And to me, there's a number of different lines of business. Our expertise is in the casino business, both slots as well as tables, as well as horse racing. And lottery is a different line of business that we don't participate in. We hope to become a retailer for the Massachusetts Lottery. But we found within our land-based businesses, and what we've seen with online, is you have very different customers, and it's important to offer all of the different channels of gaming. And there are different, I'll say, business processes and rules, and I think it's important to have specialists who go after the different types of gaming. And in our environment, we feel very good about casino operations, table games, and that's what we do well. We also know that as we have opened up our loyalty program to multi-property, that the most valuable customers are the customers that visit us in more than one property. And I think we're going to find with what I'll call multi-channel, which is, again, my background, that customers that visit you online and come into your land-based property are worth much more than a customer that visits you in a single channel. So that's really our objective, would be for the lines of business that are legal, that we participate in those, but both online as well as offline. And Probably the best example, there's a few Amazons and eBays that are out there, but there are many more of the traditional retailers that embrace the internet and are very successful. And consumers expect to be able to find an online and an offline offering. And we don't want to be a Blockbuster. We don't want to be a Tower Records. There's many examples where traditional, I'll say, consumer-based businesses did not adapt to the internet and are now no longer here.
And you attribute to their sort of dinosauric disappearance to their failure to adopt rather than the business model changing?
It's probably both, but I think there's a lot of candle makers that said the light bulb was never going to catch on.
Chuck Bunnell, from your standpoint, and not focusing specifically on you necessarily, on Mohegan Sun, but where do you see this internet piece fitting into things over, say, the next 5 years? Where do you think this industry is going to be in so far as brick and mortar and internet in 5 years?
Judge, thank you. Thank you, members of the commission, for giving us the opportunity to be here. We've given it a lot of thought, and I think pending the federal government coming in and making a decision for all of us, which is something that we all need to continue to watch, because there are a lot of things that are happening in Washington that would impact all 50 of the states, or at least 47 of them, because 3 have already made that step. I'd say that if, as Stephen said, if the players stay within their lane, that we can all prosper. I believe that if lotteries are offering subscription services and selling draw games on the internet, that they have the opportunity to reach to a different generation that they may be losing, and that they'll prosper. I think that traditional commercial operators that have the ability to market and contact their existing customer base and potentially expand on that customer base through the internet, that will prosper. I think where things get difficult, and it's really important that regulators and legislators come together and help guide us as operators to establish the boundaries and those lanes in which we stay in. So I think with your guidance, I think we can all prosper and be successful.
Kim Sinatra, let me ask you the same question. You look out at the world as other operators do. Where do you see the internet, casino, lottery space in 5 years?
Well, gosh, I don't know. My crystal ball is usually a little foggy, but I will do my best.
Surely.
It's interesting because I think that this issue, among all others, has caused the most divisiveness in our industry. Because as you see, even our trade association, the AGA, can't decide what its position is, because there are people who fall on both ends of the spectrum. There are people in our industry who tell us we're going to be Blockbuster or Tower Records tomorrow unless we adopt and go online straight away. There are others who say it's not safe, we don't believe in it, it's immoral, and we're going to stay away from it. Our company, and I'm going to make it a little specific because that's what I know, has wrestled with this issue for years and years and years, without any clear consensus, I must tell you. I think that what we do is incredibly specialized. Ours is an experiential luxury experience. And so, as Steve Wynn says, I can't distinguish myself on a 17-inch screen. I don't get it. And so from our perspective, creating tourism, providing hospitality, and a luxury experience is sort of what we do. There are people who believe very much in providing the experience and the product on the internet. I think that the important thing to understand is the segmentation. Who is your customer? Are the same customers, and that's the cannibalization argument, right? Is the same customer who comes to a table games customer at Wynn the same person who you're trying to get at the lottery or at an online casino or at a slot machine in a local casino? And I think that a lot of people will say those customers are different. When, in preparation for this panel, I started pulling some of the academic research about this issue. First of all, there's not very much in the US yet because the legalized online business is so new. But there are some things that people know from looking at the UK, right? Is there substitution? There usually is, and somebody said it earlier. Is there substitution between the lottery and online? Yes. There probably is some cannibalization there. Is the person who is online the same guy who's going to the Borgata or not going to the Borgata? Probably not. The early returns in New Jersey would tell you they're probably not the same customer. We don't feel like people substitute online for a win experience at this time and maybe ever. And so I guess I'm going to jump ahead, and the cautionary part is go slow. You don't have to eat the elephant all today. I think that a lot of people are going to find out as the smaller states like Nevada and New Jersey and Delaware and Maryland wade into this territory, you're going to learn a lot. What are the effects upon the lottery? What are the effects upon bricks and mortar? And considering the different sort of governing patterns that you have here, some trends are going to emerge.
And as you look at this, and as you've summarized the look you've taken, do I understand you to say that there is a piece of this that may be casino specific or website specific, i.e., if there is a particular standout experience at a casino or at a website, that's going to matter more than some general trend might otherwise?
We know that's true in bricks and mortar, right? We know that you can drive a premium in a premium facility. And so that we know in bricks and mortar. On the internet, I think that the jury is out. Usability is important, and the ease of processing payments is essential. And so people are finding those real struggles in the early days. Those are affecting people uniformly. And so we haven't even gotten to the place where can you distinguish between World Series of Poker and someone else's poker room. They're different, and the animators will tell you they're different, and you would think that a discerning customer can tell, but it feels like ease of use on the internet and navigability and convenience are the things that people care about. We're not so sure that they distinguish between what color the felt is.
One of the things we talked about this morning at some length was social gaming, and I want to spend just a second or two talking about that. Where is, and under the general framework of where is that going to go over the next 5 years, and how will its trajectory affect the internet and traditional casinos and lotteries? Stephen Martino, I'm going to come back to you, if I might, to give us an insight on your thoughts on that. There is free play on at least one Maryland casino now. We heard this morning about free play. We heard about freemiums. You start off free, then you buy and pay actual money for more. And we've heard about, well, I guess that's the second model. Where do you see that piece? And we've also seen and heard this morning about significant monetary revenues coming in to people from the paid social gaming. What, if any, thoughts do you have about where that's going to go over the next few years?
So you're right. Maryland Live, again, the largest casino, is operating through its Aristocrat player tracking system, a free online play system, which they say has been wildly successful in helping them market and promote their casino. It's not freemium. You don't start free and go to premium. There's no consideration. You just go on, you play, you don't win anything. We don't even allow the accumulation of any kind of player reward points. It's a way for them to brand their casino, extend their reach. I hear when I go to conferences like this, industry conferences, I hear a lot about regulation of social gaming. I can tell you in the incredible number of things that the Maryland legislature has asked this agency to do over the past 5 years, never once has anyone even remotely brought up the notion of regulating social gaming. I don't know that at a state public policy maker level that it's on anyone's mind. That doesn't mean it's not important, but ultimately we have to stay in our lane as an agency, as a regulatory authority, and we don't have any in that area. Clearly our casinos don't have the ability to go to internet gaming, so right now, even if they wanted to, they couldn't transition, Maryland Live couldn't transition their internet site to some kind of pay to play. And so, to get into the area of, the Candy Crush and the Farmville and the poker, which, Keith White was talking about in his presentation today, I think that's going to be a much deeper conversation. You're going to start bringing the Facebooks of the world, the platforms where these are at. I don't know, it's a legal issue probably that I'm certainly not acquainted with at this point in time. I'm not even sure that we've got the legal authority on the state level to do that, nor as near as I can tell, there's certainly no interest on, at least in the state of Maryland right now, to going into that area.
Vernon Kirk, one use of it is as a stalking horse for the full version of online gaming. That's the use of it that you put. Do you see that use continuing, and do you see any other uses of that continuing over the next 5 years? Are there other uses that would be helpful?
First, let me say I agree with Steve. Delaware has not been asked these questions either as far as regulatory for promotional or free play. And I think there's a distinction. Delaware did use IGT's Double Down for about 1 month prior to going live with our games. As a player acquisition and just to player education to get people more associated with gaming online. Once we went live, we took the Double Down sites down, but they were very popular. And there's at least one proposal out there now from one of our casinos to put back up a different free play site, which they think can help them market to their play for pay. I think the distinction, and Stephen kind of touched on it right at the end, is between, when you talk about social gaming, to me that pushes aside the free play casino style things and brings more into the Facebook crowd that are playing against each other in a lot of games you've seen on TV, those types of games. I personally think that from a lottery, not necessarily an online or a casino perspective, but from a lottery perspective, I think those types of games are the future. That's where your new customer base is going to come from. Whether it's translated via an instant ticket maybe or something like that, but it's going to be something where right now you have tournaments for Warcraft or Halo. These are going to be converted at some point in time, I'm convinced, into some sort of a revenue producing, you're going to operate tournaments for profit, play against your friends and Family Feud or something like that where somebody's hosting it for some sort of monetary. And now, there's prize consideration and chance that has to be involved to make that happen. And I don't know that that's how it's going to happen or it's going to be in that format, but I believe in X number of years, 3 years, 5 years, or whatever, that's really the next horizon.
And do you see that as you said one of the magic words there, do you see that as an environment where chance determines the outcome or where skill is, or is it going to be ambiguous in your view?
I think it's going to be ambiguous. There are games now that, there are some video games now that require a certain amount of skill, and I think that line is going to get blurred. I really do.
Chuck?
I just might direct the commission and your staff. It's been an issue of great debate in California as they evaluate the potential legalization of internet gaming there. They've had hearings on the definition of social gaming, dealing with a lot of the questions that you're raising, Judge. So there is actually a record in California on the subject matter.
Well, we certainly need to keep our eye on that because some of the numbers involved in some of the articles I've read are enormous. George Sweeney, do you see any role for social gaming or free play gaming as the stalking horse for your rollout that's going to come?
I do, much like Vern has said. I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but as we watch companies like Facebook monetize their their games, so they're in the bingo business now in a pay-to-play way, and that's kind of a step in that direction, and you can just see the potential convergence of the games, the demographics, and the gaming side merging together. So we don't have a mandate for it today. We're watching it carefully. We talk to our colleagues at IGT about Double Down and where they're going with it and why they're going there. And so we're in full open eyes, open ears, listening hard, and we'll figure out where it's going and whether or not we'll leverage it in the future.
Let me shift gears slightly now, because we started out talking about the three legs of this stool, if you will, the internet, the lottery, and casinos. And I want to spend a second thinking about whether or not they should have separate spheres of exclusivity. Senator Flanagan, you introduced a bill that would authorize the conduct of online lotteries. And in connection with introduction of that bill, did you think about this three-legged stool issue, and if so, what, if any, conclusions did you come to?
Well, I think when, back in 2012, when the Internet Gaming Task Force was formed under Treasurer Grossman, we began to look strictly at the lottery products, which would be the lottery games, because at that point, we weren't sure what was going forward with the casinos. And so I think in Massachusetts, because we're so early in the expanded gaming phase, we don't even have our casinos built yet. We wanted to tread very lightly, so the legislation that I filed, which came from the task force recommendations, was to allow the lottery to look into the possibility of it. There was nothing set, there's no money even attached to this, to go out and get consultants or to utilize consultants. And so it was truly the lottery products, because at that point, the lottery has full control over it. And so I think as it was filed also as a conversation starter, because where are we going to go in Massachusetts, and how are we going to proceed, given the fact that the lottery does not oversee expanded gaming or the casinos or the slot parlor in Massachusetts.
And has your thinking evolved at all since that bill was filed?
Oh, it
no
certainly
reason
has.
that it should have, but
It certainly has. I think as we progress with the expanded gaming in Massachusetts, we certainly need to look at how it's going to affect casinos once they're built. It's going to affect the slot parlor, and how it's going to affect just players in general. Certainly, there's a concern when we talk about internet gaming. With my constituency, you hear people say, well, my families are going to go broke. Well, all of a sudden, they're just going to be able to use credit cards or debit cards, and that's not what this is intended for. We have small businesses that are concerned. The convenience stores, they won't get the residual sales from people coming in to buy a couple of scratch tickets or the mass number. So I think it's evolving. I'm not too sure that we have a final product, because I think it has to evolve as we move forward with the casino process in Massachusetts. And once we know where everything is sited, and we also need to give the casinos room to breathe. We just did expanded gaming in Massachusetts. There is a thing as too much too soon. And so we need to certainly look at how much we're going to put forward in front of the players in Massachusetts. But keep in the back of our minds that there are 3 states that have looked at this. There are states looking at moving forward. So it's evolving.
let me ask you, Senator Tarr, if I might, a similar question. You too introduced a bill to allow internet gaming, and part of that bill said that the authorization, if the bill were enacted, would not include anything that simulated or resembled a slot machine or was in conflict with a game that was run by the state lottery. Could you expand on your thinking behind that?
I sure could, and I think it's important to understand, first of all, that from my perspective, we're talking about a situation of inevitability. This kind of gaming is occurring throughout the world. It's occurring even by players in Massachusetts with folks that are unlicensed and unregulated in many respects. And so this is a situation where we have to closely examine our model for gaming and to say, is it capturing all of the potential that it should be capturing? And so when we talk about trying to develop that model even further. We've already seen that in Massachusetts. We've seen it over the last several decades. We've seen Keno, we've seen lottery products, now we've seen casinos. And so as we evolve that model, one of the questions is, how do the pieces fit together? And certainly to have internet gaming to capture dollars that we aren't currently capturing, and I think we've already heard comments about that today, makes sense. But to do something that so closely and directly would compete with an existing product doesn't make sense at the present time. There's also another issue with regard to the slot machine activity, and that is that in the internet format, it might be too susceptible to someone developing an addiction or developing an overuse relative to the availability or the necessity of skill with regard to playing that particular game. And so there are a number of reasons why we chose in our bill at this point to exclude that particular modality.
And the exclusion was not to give it to somebody else, but to exclude it, period.
Correct.
Yep. One of the things that we need that everybody needs to think about is what the most helpful legislative role is. We've got situations in which the states, and the default modality is that the states regulate this area. We've got some federal bills that have been introduced, the Reed-Kyle bill being one, and there are others that are in play now. And then there is some effort, some sustained effort to prohibit the entire thing from start to finish. Now, Senator Tarr, do you have any view as to the role of the state and federal legislatures in this space at a very high level and without committing you to any permanent position?
Well, first of all, I want to let you know that I've been lobbying Senator Flanagan for my bill while we've been sitting up here. But it's already been referenced at the table, and that is, I think the most important role of the federal government right now is to provide some clarity on the issue. There are certainly folks trying to explore all the different contours of the existing laws, and that's before we get into the laws that might be proposed in the area. It seems to me that the states are already engaged in gaming. There are the vast majority of the states are engaged in gaming, and it should be allowed to continue within the rules that they can establish. And it seems to me that the federal government would be well served by looking at what the states have developed and try to do something that harmonizes with them rather than something that necessarily preempts or conflicts with them. That being said, it's important for the states, I think, to try to develop a regulatory rubric here as quickly as possible, because again, this isn't a situation where this activity isn't occurring because we don't regulate it. Quite the opposite. This is a situation that is occurring in many cases and we don't regulate it. So it seems to me that in many ways, the federal government now trying to do something that is preemptive would be swimming against the tide, and it would be somewhat in the nature of prohibition, to be honest. So it seems to me that we have to figure out the right way to approach this. And to infringe on states' rights, I think, would beg a conflict that isn't necessary or productive in the field of law that we're talking about.
Senator Flanagan, do you have thoughts on this area, in this area?
Well, I think,
Could you speak into the microphone? Yeah, thanks.
I think Senator Tarr is right in the fact that we need to work together to do this. Certainly, we're moving towards more gaming in our states. People are looking at dollars that aren't being captured. Here in Massachusetts, we have a very successful lottery, and we need to preserve that and also, figure out how we can expand gaming. So if the feds and the state legislatures or governments do not work together, there's going to be a lot of unnecessary conflict, and it may set us back. So it's important that, we do work together and so that we can move forward productively. And we know that we're moving forward. We just have to figure out a way to do it.
Stephen Martino, do you have some thoughts on this topic from the regulator's standpoint? You're closely involved with the day-to-day regulation. You've been regulating it for years, and now you see these issues arising.
Well, in particular, being in Maryland and so close to Washington, we've been involved in those discussions as well. Probably unlike just about every lottery, we staked out a position several years ago that said that we would have been okay with some federal involvement in this. Obviously, it depended on what that federal involvement was. In particular, the Reed-Kyle bill was not something that we could be supportive of because of how limiting it was, and obviously it was just poker only, but also was really mandating to states who the participants could be in the jurisdiction. And it does seem very heavily weighted towards Nevada. I think in general, we think that each state should adopt its own sensibility on this issue. Nevada, New Jersey, Delaware have. They've passed legislation allowing for internet gaming. Georgia and Illinois, Minnesota, North Carolina through subscriptions are all selling lottery products. Michigan and Kentucky say that they'll be selling internet lottery products by the end of this year. So, I think ultimately each state can make its own decision. Maryland hasn't reached that point yet, but when public policymakers decide that it's in the best interest of the state to do so, then it will. And as Senator said before, it's inevitable. At some point in time, each state is probably, if they have an inclination towards gaming, is probably going to adopt this because they are going to be looking to capture revenue that's lost, and frankly, every state continues to need revenue.
Marcus Prater, from the equipment manufacturer's standpoint, does it make any difference what model is adopted?
Well, it does in that we are at the mercy of our customers, who are right now, the majority of them are the bricks and mortar casino operators. So we typically align with what the operators want going forward. And then our individual members are also in the internet space with, the Bally and IGT and all the others, creating not only the engines that drive internet gaming, but the content and ultimately the marketing and the systems behind it. So we definitely have a vested interest in this, and I would say I agree with Senator Tarr that in a perfect world, having some level of federal oversight or framework or clarity would be a wonderful thing. I'm not sure we're going to get there anytime soon, but then yes, it becomes a state's issue, and we would like this thing to roll out and be very orderly, and it's just not going that way. But I think we also have to be aware of what's happening with the potential of a federal ban that's a real threat that will affect, as Chuck said, 47 of the 50 states if it goes through. And so there's probably not a whole lot we can do about it other than what we've been doing collectively, and that's sharing information and working through the AGA and other sources, and I guess time will tell where it all ends up.
Another offshoot of the state regulated model, is the multi-state agreement model underneath the broad form of individual state regulation. That is something you just entered into, Vernon. Could you explain how that is working, and what it was that led you to do it, and whether that gives you some insights and some base for favoring one or the other of these models that's in play? That's a big question, but you can take any piece of it you'd like.
Well, basically, the agreement between Delaware and Nevada was a legal framework to do share poker liquidity. It's yet to be determined exactly how that's going to be accomplished, or with whom, for that matter. There are several casinos in Nevada offering online gaming, and of course all three casinos in Delaware will be participating when and if we get to that stage. But I think the most important part of this is it was designed to have enough foresight to be able to include other states as they come around, as Steve was saying, when and if the states pass their own legislation. This agreement has made it very easy for other states to come into this agreement, so it should expand pretty quickly when and if other states get there. So how it's going to work, or it's still pretty unclear. The premise, of course, is always revenue. That's the big 800-pound gorilla in the room. But frankly, the indirect reasons are more important. They end up producing the revenue, and that is giving your players the most positive or entertaining playing experience. It was mentioned earlier today about this happens by being able to go to a poker room and find the game of your choice at the stakes of your choice at the hour of your choice. Maybe you're a shift worker and you can only play at 3 in the morning or something. In Delaware, I can tell you with some degree of certainty, you will not find a game of poker online at 3 in the morning. But maybe with Nevada, you will, or Nevada and another state or another state. So it's about enhancing the player experience. They'll come, and if they don't find their game, they might leave, or they might just play a little bit and go. But if they find their game, they might play longer. And so that's how it generates revenue. And then who knows what's around the corner? This is such, it's so new that right now it's poker with Nevada. If we agree with another state and it includes table games, then maybe you come and play blackjack at a Delaware table, or a Delaware player goes and plays a slot machine at a undisclosed state's table. So we just don't know how it's going to end up, but it's we laid the groundwork, so we'll see what happens now.
Is the Powerball model something that is a useful model?
It is. It is called the Multi-State Agreement, and Powerball is operated by the Multi-State Lottery Association. And to say we borrowed liberally from that agreement might be an understatement. But it does have a really good infrastructure, and one that we can utilize with some reasonable modifications. And as a matter of fact, we consulted with the Multi-State Association about the structure of their agreement, our agreement, and Delaware's and Nevada's agreement. So that's one of the areas that when people talk about a federal law for consistency and stuff, there's no federal law that governs Powerball or Mega Millions, and they're operated by a wide variety of states and quite well, I might add. So there's a difference of opinion in that arena, I think.
Do the operators have any preference? I know you'd be delighted to operate with whatever regulator is there, but Kim Sinatra?
Well, I think that you have to look at, that compact was sort of necessity, because as Vern alluded to, the liquidity is, poker's all about liquidity. How many people are playing at what time, at what level. And so both Delaware and Nevada are pretty puny on liquidity. And so they needed to sort of expand the base to have any sort of viability to the business at all. California could do poker on its own, right? Because there are enough people there. And so the desires of the states are going to differ. There is a huge divide between people believing that poker only is the solution versus casino games. The liquidity issue isn't the same, really, with casino games.
I mean, poker only for the internet?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm talking only internet
Right,
at this point.
right.
And so I think that there is very much that's undecided and up in the air, and drawing really broad conclusions at this stage of the operation of the business is premature. I thought it was kind of interesting that people were not wanting to talk very much about revenue and real potential, right? Because it's the prognosticators have been out there for years talking about billions and billions of dollars you're going to make online gaming on the internet, right? Well, the early returns have not been good. A lot of it has to do with the practical realities of how do you get the money to flow, right? The payment solutions have been very, very tough and very slow to go. And so very slowly, bank by bank, inch by inch, people are making some progress on that. But the idea that there are just truckloads of money that are going by that you should be scared that you're missing, I think is probably not the way I'd look at it.
Chuck?
I think it very much depends on what games you're willing to offer. As the other panelists have said, liquidity really only matters for a very limited number of games like poker. For the other games, It's not required, so you don't need a multi-state compact. Then again, you have to weigh what games you, as a jurisdiction, want to put in everyone's home. And that's a very serious policy question that you, as a regulatory body and legislators, will sit down and discuss. There's a lot to weigh.
Tom, did you want to weigh in on this?
I would. We're currently operating in 19 different states today, and each one has its nuances. And while I think the federal government, the premise would be an overlying consistency, I think undoing many of the things that are unique state by state would make that a very difficult proposition. It would be very helpful if we knew exactly what the rules were and if the threat of a ban was off the table, but beyond that, we are not proponents of federal legislation. At this point, I think it's much better to deal with it at the state level, and there are very different priorities across the individual states. The other thing that, from my perspective, would be very helpful is the right pace, and to me, the right pace is to go slowly. There's a lot of changes that have occurred. We've been looking at internet gaming very seriously for about 3 years now, and have made literally no investments other than continuing to watch the market. And the reason that's the case is it's changing constantly. And I think, as we're seeing, with Kim had mentioned, it's going to start slowly. There's going to be a lot of learning. And quite honestly, it's very good to start in some of the smaller markets where the investments can be a little smaller, and we can learn just as much from it. So the only thing I would encourage is, as we move forward, in particular in Massachusetts, that we take it at a reasonable pace, and you'll have to define what reasonable is for you. But from a Penn perspective, starting with the casino side in a traditional land-based market is a great place to start, and then you've got a great lottery that may be a good model to start with as well. But to go full-blown on all types of gaming very quickly, I think would be very difficult to implement consistently.
Jim, are you going to, are you going to bring us in for, go ahead.
Now is a good time, because I was going to take one more topic. Actually, let me take one more topic, and then I'll bring you in, and then I'm going to ask these thoughtful people for their final word. But I don't want to leave this discussion without a focus on responsible gaming, which we heard about this morning. George Sweeney, you said that responsible gaming was baked into your model, and we saw that. Did you do things differently on the internet, or are you planning to do things differently on the internet than you are, in principle at least, in the brick and mortar casinos?
Actually, I would say our approach is going to be to take
I'm sorry, could you speak into that microphone?
Sorry.
We're streaming this to a lot of people who aren't here, so.
Our approach is going to be to take a very consistent approach to RG across all of our lines of business. You will have different tools for different parts of the business. In the casino world, we have developed biometric facial recognition, and that is proving to be an incredibly effective way to keep self-excluded patrons out of our casinos, much more effective, and we've got 16,000 of them in the province of Ontario, than the system we had in place before. So we're going to take I would say, a common philosophy across all the lines of business, but we'll use effective tools where we can use them. So the internet piece, and I explained some of the tools that we've got in there, we committed to a gold standard. We've committed to a gold standard across all lines of business. We see RG as really a competitive advantage to us in the long run. We don't want problem gamblers in any part of our business, and we would much rather have a very broad base of players that's a sustainable base of players spending less money than a few players playing a lot of dollars. And it's critical to the future of our business. That would be what I would call one of our Achilles heels if we do not address the responsible gambling file appropriately.
Stephen Martino, you are the chair of the Responsible Gaming Committee of the National Association of State and provincial lotteries. Has that group focused on any internet-specific responsible gaming issues as of this point?
Not on internet. We haven't. We've really been focused on lottery-related issues. The committee really had not been particularly active until the last couple of years. So we've made some significant progress and working collaboratively with the National Center for Problem Gambling on some issues. Obviously, again, in Maryland, we don't have internet gaming or internet lottery, but I would expect that when we do, we would make sure that we have robust responsible gambling awareness and problem gambling treatment. We already have a very effective, I think, problem gambling treatment awareness framework in the state of Maryland that is funded by the brick and mortar casinos. We charge $425 per year per slot machine on a floor, $500 for a table game. That money goes to a Center for Excellence that was created by the State Department of Health and Mental Hygiene that's housed at the University of Maryland School of Medicine. I think if we add internet to the portfolio, then we'll adapt accordingly and make sure that there's awareness and treatment for those who choose to play on the internet.
Senator Tarr, among your many accomplishments is your master's in mental health. I'm sorry, Senator Flanagan. Among your many accomplishments is your master's in mental health counseling. This must be an issue that you've given some thought to. So could you share those thoughts with us, please?
Even when we filed the gaming bill a couple years ago, before it passed the legislature, one of the biggest components that I was concerned was problem gamblers. And not only because it affects your business, but because it affects our entire Commonwealth and it affects families, which in turn really comes to the heart of the economy of our states, is that we want to make sure people are playing responsibly. And if we see that there are problems, then we can intervene. Obviously, right now, what's on the front of everyone's mind is drug addiction and how that affects family. Well, gaming addiction is similar in the fact that it's not deadly, but it brings you into just despair as any kind of addiction would. And so as we look at the addictive personality and we look at players who may be addicted to gaming, and it's not necessarily a land-based facility. I mean, there's people who can walk into a casino and not play a slot machine, but give them any Red Sox or Patriots game and they're betting illegally or legally, depending on where they are. So we recognize the fact that this encompasses all areas of gaming, and we want to make sure that any and all actions that we take as a Commonwealth, we keep that in mind. And I think Massachusetts has a really great organization to deal with compulsive gambling and to deal with addiction. So we work with them to ensure that we're paying close attention to this. And as we move to the internet phase, it's really going to get concerning because you're not in that place wherever they are. You're not on that smartphone, you're not on that computer or that iPad. So that's really where we're going to have to rely on the industry, which we're happy with the fact that the provisions that are put in place now for land-based casinos is that people can, sort of be swiped out of a casino and you can never really utilize your cards there again. We're going to rely on that for internet-based, and I think that's where the gold standard really is going to help us move forward in this conversation, because at a time when people are still looking for jobs and people are still trying to keep the jobs that they have and keep their families, sort of above par and not be homeless and not have all the economic problems, this could be a trigger for some. And so while we can't save everyone from themselves, we have to do what we can to save the Commonwealth and the people in the Commonwealth from going down that road.
Thank you. I apologize for that slip, but I made it because I meant to say that Senator Tarr told me in advance he'd have to leave early, so that's why he left. All right, thank you very much, Senator Flanagan. Now, before I ask each of these folks for a last thought, if there are questions, let's have them.
Well, there seems like sort of a consensus that to the extent we can estimate that these three pillars can coexist with probably relatively minimal cannibalization as long as everybody stays in their own lanes. And Tom maybe said, what are those lanes? But I'm interested, particularly you who are supervising all of them, is it pretty clear in your mind or in anybody's mind that you can make a clear distinction between online lottery games and online casino games? Are those lines clear enough that in an environment where you might have two different regulators, as we might in Massachusetts, where you can draw those lines?
I think the answer is yes. The only
Use the mic.
The only blurring area is if you try to do electronic instant tickets online. Otherwise, if you're selling a Powerball ticket or a Mega Millions ticket off the lottery website, I don't think really equates to the casino experience. But there is some talk of doing electronic instant tickets online, and that could blur the line a little bit. But I'm still not quite sure that it's not a different customer.
We in the industry are waiting to see. Minnesota has just in the last few weeks put scratch tickets online. Those of us in the commercial operators are a bit concerned that 3 pineapples or 3 bells and a scratch ticket that you instantly push, it looks a lot like a slot machine.
Right, right. Are you in Minnesota?
We're not.
You're not, but
we're not.
Yeah.
But we're watching
You are?
each state.
No, we don't. Yeah.
George? I mean, I think the comment is fair that some of the electronic instant tickets could start to blur the lines. That really is going to be determined by the payouts and the pay structures that you put against them. Our lottery base is a much larger base of players. About 53% of Ontario adults play lotteries on a regular basis, once every 2 months at least. The casino demographic is smaller. It's about 25% of adults. But we do know that most of our casino players are also lottery players. In fact, we develop products specifically, lottery products specifically to market to our casino products, our casino players. And we provide different types of prizing to our lottery players that may encourage them to go and try a casino product. So, I mean, we're managing the overall marketplace, and you know, there'll always be challenges there, but I think that's an opportunity for us more than anything else.
I had a question about sports betting. Senator, you just mentioned the Red Sox or the Patriots. I'm very well aware of spending a lot of time in New Jersey, how prevalent the illegal sports betting is, as it is here in the Commonwealth. And I had an interesting conversation with a legal bookmaker in Europe about what a significant piece of business that is in Europe, and mainly on our teams, by the way. And I know the pushback from the professional teams along this line, but I was wondering, particularly with our panelists who do business in Las Vegas and Canada, about that book of business and how big a piece it is and what we think the future of that will be. As we're speaking of online gambling, what do we think the future of sports betting is in a legal manner?
I can start from the Canadian front. OLG has a product, it's a lottery-based product called ProLine. It's a parlay wagering system. We do about $300 million a year in volume, so all parlay wagers, that's 2 or more, it's usually 3 games. All of the major sports leagues we offer, other than the NBA, and that was a deal that was carved out between the province and the NBA when they expanded into Canada with the Raptors. They basically said, we don't want you to offer the NBA on your ProLine lists, and we won't let the Raptors come to town unless you take it off, so that's the deal. The Canadian Senate is currently considering a bill that was passed through the House of Commons unanimously to take a prohibition out of the code which prevents the wagering on single event sports. So we are all watching that with great interest. That is a massive piece of business, and we are doing considerable research around what that would look like if, in fact, the Senate moves forward with that piece of legislation.
So from an operator perspective, the sportsbook is not a significant part of our business at all in Las Vegas, including pari-mutuel and that entire segment. That said, there's sort of a constitutional issue, right, in the United States, and New Jersey is trying to push against at least the conventional wisdom that PASPA, which was a federal law that was passed that said only 3 states who opted in within a certain period of time had the right to offer sports betting. And so unless and until that legal rubric changes. It's currently in the federal courts. New Jersey is not doing well. But unless they make some progress, it's sort of a dead issue. But it's something that we offer is not a significant part of our business. Thank you.
Any other thoughts? Any other questions? All right, then let me do as I promised and ask for one big thought as we wind up, and I'll start at the far end and just work down this way because the senator gets the last word. Marcus?
Well, thank you, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. I mean, my thought is that these type of events are exactly what's needed when a new state or a new jurisdiction, a new country, you know, any group that's considering a new form of gaming. I mean, obviously you're headed down a road. You've had the lottery, the casinos are coming, things are progressing there. Now we're talking about internet. But as long as we have sort of forward-thinking groups that are doing their homework in advance, I think that everything will work out just fine. I've been in this business now a little over 20 years, and like others have said, this industry is full of very intelligent, good people. It's an entertaining industry to be in, but there's regulatory bodies, and there's probably too many trade groups, frankly, in our industry. So everybody's interests are already represented by the various groups, but for all the behind-the-scenes politicking that goes on, these groups work very well together, and you've done a good thing by reaching out to all the different people that have been here today to act as resources. You're learning, the public learns, and eventually everyone feels good about at least the process has run its course, and nothing has, no stone has been left unturned. So I have great confidence in this industry and the people in it, and I think good things are coming to the Commonwealth.
Thank you. Tom?
I won't repeat everything that Marcus said, but I agree. I think it's great to solicit input from all constituents. The other thing I would encourage you is look outside of gaming. Well, there are a lot of nuances because gaming is regulated. It's state by state. There are a lot of differences, but there's a lot that can be learned in moving to the online space in particular from financial services, healthcare, retail, a lot of other industries that have gone farther down the road than gaming has. And then you have to layer that with the things that are unique to the online gaming industry. But I think today was, actually, I learned a lot today. It was great. Thanks for the invitation.
Kim?
I'm going to echo the thoughts of the two previous panelists. Is I think that this is always a helpful dialogue. I assume that the Commonwealth will continue upon its methodical path to try to get to the right place. I think
with emphasis
that was a compliment, Commissioner. Look at Delaware and Maryland sitting together, Mohegan and Wynn sitting together. This is quite the peaceful organization right here. So I would encourage you not to be deterred by the hurry, hurry, hurry emergency part of this conversation. I think that it's helpful to see what other states experience as they journey down this path, and oftentimes you can learn a lot, and the experience will translate.
Thanks. Chuck?
I'd make a joke of being the fourth person who's going to say the same thing, but I won't. We're a resource. We've spent a lot of time in this field. We've testified before Congress 3 times now. We've testified at state level 3 or 4 times. We have a free play site. We have data that we'd be willing to share with the commission if it's helpful to you to look at the crossover that we have. We consider this a partnership and a relationship that we've been involved in with for a long time, and would concur. We're a resource and we'll want to continue to be one.
George?
Final thanks to the Commission for inviting me here today. I've met some great people. I've learned lots. That has been critical in my career in gaming. There is always something to learn. There are challenges on the horizon. I mentioned our player base in lottery. It used to be 70%. It's now 53% of regular players. What's it going to look like 5 years from now? How can you leverage different channels in different ways to look at growing the opportunities down the road? And I agree with Tom. There's a lot to learn outside the gaming business. Sometimes we're a little bit narrowly focused. So I really think that's a great idea as well.
Vern?
Well, I'll certainly agree with my colleagues before me. Take your time. But I'll add to that, choose your partners very carefully.
Great, thank you. Stephen?
I would encourage you to be supple in your approach and adaptive to change. Who knows when internet lottery may come to Massachusetts. Who knows when it might come to Maryland. If it's a couple of years, it's almost certain that it won't look then like it looks now, and you'll have to approach things differently, building upon the cumulative progress that other states have charted. Thank you for having me.
Senator Flanagan.
Thank you for allowing the legislature to be a part of this. I think as we did during the expanded gaming debate, we want to do our due diligence as a legislature as we talk about iGaming. And one of the biggest concerns we have is how it affects our constituencies, especially with the beginning of the casino industry coming to Massachusetts. So my suggestion, and the suggestion I've had to my colleagues, is that we tread lightly into uncharted territories here in Massachusetts and make sure that we do this right. And we do it with the amount of transparency that we conducted the expanded gaming legislation at, and making sure that although we pay attention to the other states, we do what's right for Massachusetts. And if that means we need to take our time, then we'll certainly have those debates on the floor of the House and the Senate.
Thank you. Well, in summing up, it is clear from today and today's thoughtful presentations that there are numerous pieces that go into this area. And it's also clear that the complexity of trying to ensure protection for the lottery, which is part of our fundamental mission. It's a great resource for the Commonwealth, while at the same time giving room for this new industry that promises great benefits to the Commonwealth, room for that to grow and grow adequately and exponentially is an enormous challenge. And we are greatly added, and I know I speak for all of the commissioners, greatly aided by the willingness of all of you to come and share your thoughts with us today, and for all the other presenters who came from across the world and across the country to be with us today and to share your thoughts. So a great thanks to all of you for your willingness to share, and we're now adjourned.
Thank you.